Chapter 51. At the gate of Magnolia. Watching Lamia Scales' carriage leave, Arusha looked at Ian calmly. Is it really okay to tell them that? Don't underestimate my vision, Tia. Ian said with a smile, back then, I saw your potential at first sight and brought you to Fairy Tale. It would be fine if she didn't mention this matter, but as soon as she did, Arusha felt her blood pressure soar. Although Ian had just woken up and had limited power, this was no reason to treat her like a beast of burden for 3 years. Looking at Arusha who was glaring at him, Ian sneered twice, then quickly turned around and walked towards the guild. The president should be back today, let's go and greet him. Makarov was still immersed in great sorrow when he returned to the guild. He didn't even know how he walked out of the council. When Ian and Arusha returned to the guild, they saw a strange scene. All the guild members were gathered around the bar, and everyone looked at a loss. Myra and Lysina were at the innermost, constantly comforting Makarov, who was crying like an 80-year-old child. President, I doubt what you've been through in the council chamber. Ian walked through the crowd and to the innermost part, looking at Makarov who was crying and snotting, and said teasingly. Myra was about to blame Ian, but Makarov suddenly jumped up excitedly. It's all your fault. If you had asked Myra and the others to take me away with you, I wouldn't have been arrested and interrogated by those guys from the council, and I wouldn't have had to pay so much money. However, what made Makarov even more angry was that Ian picked his ears without any guilt. If we take you with us, Myra and the others won't be able to escape. Besides, the guild is in Magnolia, so you'll have to bear the brunt of the burden. You're the guild leader after all. Makarov's old face turned red at a visible speed when he heard this, and white steam began to come out of his head. At this moment, everyone in the guild seemed to hear a humming sound like the water in a kettle about to boil. However, Ian quickly pulled out a check from his pocket, and the next second Makarov changed his face like a peaking opera performer, with a flattering smile on his face. Ian-sensei hearing Makarov's sweet voice and looking at his old face like a dead tree, almost everyone couldn't help but retching. This scene will become the most unforgettable nightmare in their lives. Even Ian was frightened by Makarov's show of operations. He threw the check out and immediately moved away from him. Don't come over here, or I'll attack you. Ian waved his fist as big as a casserole and glared at Makarov threateningly. Makarov didn't mind, and took the check with a smile on his face. Then he picked up the glass and drank as if nothing had happened. This calmness and this magnanimity make him worthy of being the third generation of Fairy Tale. Seeing that such a difficult situation was solved by Ian in such a simple and unpretentious way, the crowd, who not only failed to see the excitement but were instead disgusted, immediately scattered. Some people chose to go to work in order to calm their stomachs, and the rest of the people who stayed in the guild gathered around Urza and his friends. They asked them about the previous lullaby incident and what happened on Galuna Island. Urza and Myra told the truth about Eisenwald's plan and their battle with the demonized lullaby, but omitted the part about Ignati Woods. As for what happened on Galuna Island, considering that the matter about Tartaros was top secret information, Urza only vaguely revealed that Myra had gained new power on Galuna Island. Just when everyone was chatting happily, they suddenly felt their eyelids become extremely heavy and a strong sense of sleepiness came over them. Members of the guild fell on the table or the floor one after another. This feeling, is that guy? Even Urza, and Myra who just obtained the power of God on Galuna Island could only barely hold on. Along with the sound of footsteps, a man who covered his face with a black hat and a dark green mask and carried several magic wands on his back walked in from outside. You're too cautious. Ian sat at the bar, not affected at all. Because I can't bear the consequences of my identity being exposed. Mist Ogden said softly. He walked straight to the commission column, tore off a commission, showed it to Makarov, and walked out. 543. As the final countdown sounded, Mist Ogden disappeared completely outside the guild, and the guild members who had fallen into a coma also woke up one after another. This familiar feeling, is that Mist Ogden guy? Macau and the others woke up and rubbed their sleepy eyes, and started discussing. His magic is as powerful as ever. Mist Ogden. Lucy, who had just woken up from a coma, was also very curious after hearing the name. Since she joined the guild, she had only heard of Mist Ogden but had never seen him in person. He's one of the candidates for the strongest man in Fairy Tale, Elfman explained. Candidate for the strongest man. Lucy had several question marks on her head and subconsciously looked in Ian's direction. That kind of monster is no match for humans. Gray seemed to have guessed Lucy's thoughts and couldn't help but complain. He then continued to explain to Lucy, but for some reason, Mr. Ogden didn't seem to want anyone to see his true face. Every time he came to take a mission, he would make everyone fall asleep like today. So apart from the president and Ian who brought him into the guild, no one knew what he looked like. Not necessarily. Just as Gray finished speaking, Laxus's slightly frivolous voice came from the second floor. He had a scornful smile on his face, and looked at Urza and Ursha below with a slightly provocative look. I'm right, Urza. It's Laxus. Has he returned to the guild too? Seeing Laxus appear on the second floor, other people in the guild began to talk about it, and many of them showed a look of fear on their faces, as if 383 Ping was a little afraid of Laxus. At this moment, Natsu, who had been lying on the ground and sleeping soundly, was suddenly awakened by Laxus's voice. He immediately stood up and excitedly challenged him. Laxus, challenge me to a duel. How sudden! Lucy, who was startled by Natsu, complained. However, Laxus's mouth only curled up in a contemptuous arc. You can't even beat Urza, so why do you challenge me? Bang! There was a loud bang, and a table on the first floor was sacrificed heroically. Urza, unable to bear it any longer, stood up and stared at Laxus with cold eyes. What do you mean by that? The two people's eyes met, and fierce sparks burst out. The powerful momentum made the atmosphere of the guild extremely oppressive. At this moment, you could hear a pin drop in the guild, and everyone even breathed carefully, not daring to make a sound. It means I am the strongest. Laxus opened his arms and made his declaration. He looked down at Urusha, Urza, and Myra. In his eyes, only the three of them were qualified to be his opponents. Just as the four of them were confronting each other, a voice suddenly broke the suffocating atmosphere. What about me? Ian looked at Laxus on the second floor with a smile. A rare flash of fear flashed across Laxus' eyes, but his pride did not allow him to retreat. Laxus just snorted coldly, said something and turned away. Once I deal with Urza and the others, it will be your turn, Uncle Ian. Chapter 52. The flexible and adaptable steel egg. Since the Galuna Island incident, Tartaros has disappeared again, along with the resurrected Deleon. It was as if they had suddenly disappeared out of thin air. Even though the council had mobilized all its forces, it could not find any clues about Tartaros and Deleon. After a while, even the council gave up this meaningless action, and the magic world seemed to have returned to its former peace and tranquility. But those who are attentive can find that beneath this tranquility and peace, countless undercurrents are surging. The most obvious one, which is almost laid out on the table, is the battle between Fairy Tail and Fiore, the ruler of the Phantom, for the strongest. As new generations of magicians from the two guilds emerged one after another in recent years, the struggle between the two guilds has almost been exposed. The rulers of the Phantoms, under the leadership of José Porla, did not hide their hostility towards Fairy Tail. Although they did not dare to openly violate the rules of the council, they could do some small actions in private. For example, intercepting Fairy Tail's mission target, or using some special means to snatch Fairy Tail's employer. Naturally, the behavior of the Spectre ruler made the members of Fairy Tail very angry. Many of them clamored to teach the Spectre ruler a lesson, but they were all suppressed by Makarov. Oak Town, a town located in the northeast of the Kingdom of Fiore, is a city with a long history. The distribution of the ruler of the ghost stands in the central area of this city. On the cliff east of Oak Town, two figures stood facing each other. They stared at each other silently for a long time, and finally the man with the same hairstyle as the Super Saiyan 3 spoke first. You're here. Yes, I am here. You're too stupid to come. But I'm already here. What are you doing here? Come and get some stuff. What? Something that belongs to me. The two fell into silence again, but they soon put away their paws and huddled together. Old man, why do we have to do this every time we meet? The man who spoke first complained. There were different numbers of nails on his eyebrows, nose, ears, and mouth. Coupled with his Super Saiyan 3 hairstyle and his unruly attitude, he was a standard villain template. If someone familiar is here, they will be able to recognize his identity immediately, one of the trump cards of the ruler of the Phantom, the Iron Dragon Gajeel. And the other person is naturally Ian. The reason why the two people appeared here at this time has to do with the first meeting between Ian and Gajeel. It was a dark and stormy night. Well, it was a normal one. When Ian was out taking care of his baby, he happened to meet Gajeel, who had just joined Phantom's ruler not long ago. Based on the principle that since you came to me, I won't be polite. With just one blow, Ian knocked the young iron dragon unconscious. When Gajeel woke up, he was already hanging on a tree, with ropes tightly bound around his hands and feet, and a magic forbidden spell set on his body. Right below him, a white-haired boy was grilling meat around a fire. The golden fat sizzled under the flames, and the rich aroma constantly stimulated Gajeel's taste buds. He, who was already hungry, immediately began to grumble. "Hey!" Gajeel shouted loudly, but the man below ignored him. Seeing this, he began to struggle violently again, but the damn it guy remained unmoved. "Hey!" This time Gajeel raised his voice again, and the high-pitched voice startled the birds in the forest. "Why did you kidnap Master Gajeel? Are you from the Dark Guild?" The boy just grilled the meat by himself without giving any response to Gajeel. When the fragrant meat was completely out of the oven, he carefully lifted it to a position where Gajeel could not reach. Are you convinced, or not?" the young man asked stutteringly, obviously very nervous. Young Gajeel's head was full of question marks at this moment, and he even wondered if he had heard it wrong, until the other party repeated the question again. "Are you kidding, Master Gajeel?" Gajeel was immediately angry, but only for a moment. The white-haired boy seemed to be frightened by him. He staggered and fell to the ground. The barbecue in his hand fell to the ground. The golden barbecue was immediately covered with dust and could no longer be eaten. Just when Gajeel was feeling sorry for him, the white-haired boy got up from the ground and left. No matter how he called out, the boy showed no sign of turning back. It was not until the evening that Gajeel, who was already starving, finally saw the white-haired girl dressed like a little gangster walking towards him. But before he could say anything, the girl started another fire next to the ashes from the afternoon, and then took out a large piece of meat from somewhere and started roasting it as if no one was around. Looking at this familiar scene, Gajeel had a bad feeling in his heart. Really, half an hour later, the girl brought the grilled meat to the same spot. Gajeel shed tears at the corners of his mouth as he looked at the fragrant but out-of-reach grilled meat. The opponent's next move made him feel even more upset. "Do you accept it or not?" The young girl looked domineering, but the timid look of the young boy in the afternoon was completely the opposite. "You guys tell me what to wear." However, the girl was more straightforward than the boy in the afternoon. Seeing that Gajeel didn't say anything for a long time, she threw the barbecue away and walked away cursing, leaving the hungry Gajeel alone in the wind. It was already late at night when Gajeel woke up again, no doubt because of the smell of barbecue. At this time, he was so hungry that he was dizzy and groggy. In a trance, he seemed to see a familiar figure standing in front of him with a smile on his face. "I give in, I give in." Gajeel answered before the young man asked. After experiencing the torture of a cruel society, he finally chose to compromise with fate. As soon as he finished speaking, a hot object was stuffed into his mouth. He took a bite subconsciously, and the next second, a strong aroma exploded in his mouth. The myoglobin oozing out of the meat fibers mixed with the oil to form a wonderful juice, moistening his chapped lips. Gajeel's spirits suddenly lifted, and a few seconds later he was looking at Ian with longing eyes again. Ian did not disappoint Gajeel. He did not stop feeding him the seedlings until his stomach was completely full and his belly was as swollen as a pregnant woman who was several months pregnant. "UBD." Gajeel, who had regained his strength, glared at Ian with gritted teeth. It was this guy who made him lose face and suffer humiliation today. The compromise just now was just a temporary solution. Now that he was full, there was no need to play along with these guys. He wanted to get back everything he had lost. "Be careful with your words, Gangdan." Just as Gajeel was about to take action, a familiar name awakened his long-forgotten memories. His pupils suddenly contracted, visible panic appeared on his face, and his voice trembled involuntarily. "It's you, old man." Chapter 53. Haven't you seen movies? That's how the undercover agents make contacts in the movies. Ian said seriously. Gajeel's forehead bulged a few wells, and his fists clenched involuntarily. "I'm not an undercover. It doesn't matter. If Phantom goes bankrupt, I can convince the president to accept you." Ian patted Gajeel's shoulder and said with a smile. "Are you even listening to me?" Gajeel roared angrily. But the next second, Ian's reaction made him pale. Ian clenched his fist, and the joints made a crisp sound. He looked at Gajeel expressionlessly. "I seem to hear someone yelling at me just now." "No. Absolutely not," Gajeel said quickly, shaking his head like a rattle. When he recognized Ian, he thought that his strength had greatly increased and he could defeat this old man. But the cruel reality taught him a solid lesson. Your uncle is always your uncle. In order to convince him, Ian explained the logic and moved him emotionally. Finally, he expressed his sincere conviction in tears of joy. Okay, let's get down to business. What is Jose planning to do these days? He asked me to attack the Fairy Tale Guild headquarters. Gajeel said lightly, and asked me to find an opportunity to attack your people. As Ian expected, even with the chaos caused by his butterfly, Jose Porla still did not give up his plan to go to war with Fairy Tale. But his methods seemed a bit crude to Ian. With your strength, you can obviously kill Jose directly, or destroy Spectre, why do you have to go through so much trouble? Gajeel asked with some confusion. He said these words not because he was cold and emotionless. It was just that his contact with Ian over the years made him see Jose Porla's despicable nature, especially after meeting the former four elements of Phantom. If it weren't for helping Ian, he would have wanted to quit being the ruler of the Phantom long ago. This world is like a huge game, and everything in it must play by the rules. Ian said lightly, I can indeed be outside the rules, but Fairy Tale is always within the rules. People living in this world always have some concerns, whether it's friendship, family, or love. Gajeel, one day you will find your own bond. Gajeel fell into silence. For some reason, after hearing Ian's words, he, who had always been alone, suddenly felt a little lost. But at this moment, Ian suddenly changed the subject. You actually want me to kill your president? Tell me the truth, do you want to usurp the throne? Gajeel's cheeks couldn't help but twitch slightly, and his fist as big as a clay pot became hard. I can bear it. Before leaving, Ian said to Gajeel as usual, if you are ready, come to Fairy Tale. You will not be disappointed. Standing alone on the cliff, looking at Ian's receding figure, Gajeel felt a little lonely for the first time in his life. At the Phantom's ruler headquarters, Jose Porla sat on the throne that symbolized the president with a gloomy face. Gajeel has been becoming more and more disobedient in recent times, and Juvia and Todomaru have been pretending to obey his orders, which has caused his actions against Fairy Tale to become increasingly unsuccessful. In such a big guild, the only available people he had were Arya and Solution. Has that stupid woman forgotten that she was once a member of the Phantom? Jose Porla roared angrily. He blamed all the responsibility on Darcy Olieta, who was once one of the four elements, but now gave up her identity as a wizard and withdrew from the ruler of the Phantom. Not only did the other party let his daughter join Fairy Tale, the mortal enemy of Phantom Flame, but he has also been using his former identity to influence the current four elements over the years. Given the current situation, if we rashly go into war with Fairy Tale, we will have almost no chance of winning. Sol said with worry. He and Arya were the only two people who knew Jose's plan. It doesn't matter. Jose said coldly, his eyes shooting out a cold look, the Chu Rainier family promised to help us deal with Fairy Tale, on the condition that Lucy Hartfilia is handed over to them. Arya, this matter is left to you. Arya nodded grimly, and then Jose turned his gaze to Solution. You will be the one to destroy the Fairy Tale Guild Tavern on Gajeel's behalf. Make sure to PS them off. Seeing Jose so confident, Sol adjusted his monocle and smiled grimly, I can't wait to hear the goblins wail. A week later, at nightfall. 0147035235 Philo 17153330 The streets of Magnolia were empty, and everyone was asleep. The whole Magnolia was shrouded in silence. Sol arrived outside the Fairy Tale Guild Tavern in the moonlight. Looking at this historic building, the moonlight shone on his face, reflecting a cold smile. However, just as he was about to make a move, a voice suddenly came from the darkness. Jose Porla is a man of his own making. The door of Fairy Tale suddenly opened, and a white-haired young man slowly walked out. Sol recognized his identity, it was Ian Bell, the most mysterious wizard of Fairy Tale. Legend has it that he seemed to be able to stay young forever, and his appearance had not changed at all over the years. Is there a ghost? Sol's first reaction was that he was ambushed, but when he saw that no one else appeared except Ian, he breathed a sigh of relief. In his opinion, as an S-class wizard, he was not without a chance of winning in a one-on-one duel. You don't even plan to run away, and you want to continue attacking our guild tavern. Ian chuckled, I have to admit that you are very courageous. No, 3 NOS to prove that bluffing is useless. A light flashed on Sol's monocle. Ian Bell, age unknown, has been a member of Fairy Tale for many years but has rarely taken action. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Don't you want to make a move? Or can't you make a move? It seemed as if Soul had seen through the deepest secret in his heart. Ian's face suddenly changed, and a flickering murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Seeing Ian's reaction, Soul was immediately delighted. He didn't expect that his guess was actually true. The reason why the other party could stay young forever might be that he used a special secret method, which also limited the other party's combat effectiveness. Dance of the Sand. Soul, whose conjecture was confirmed, made a prompt decision and chose to take action. He wanted to destroy both the people and the buildings, and completely arouse the hot girl spirit's tail. The sand was flying all over the sky, blocking Ian's sight like smoke. Soul blended into the sand silently, and suddenly appeared in front of Ian when he was nervously looking around, and they met eyes. Let me see your memory. A flash of black light flashed in Soul's pupils, and the next second, a shrill scream resounded through the sky above Magnolia. Many people were awakened by the scream. Chapter 54. Just when Soul thought he had seen through Ian's secret and tried to read his memory, he almost became an idiot under the impact of Ian's huge memory. Onabes. Lucy and Wendy, who had just finished their work for the day, were about to return to the hotel to rest, but were blocked on the way by a strange man with his eyes covered with a bandage. Who are you? Carla saw the man's hair standing up in front of her, and she sensed an extremely dangerous aura. So sad, I heard the wail of the falling priestess from the sky. Tears kept flowing from Arya's bandaged eyes, but there was no sadness in his tone, only cold cruelty. Run, Lucy, warm. Even without Carla's reminder, Lucy and Wendy could see that the man in front of them had ill intentions towards them, so they turned around and ran, but after a few steps they found themselves frozen in place, unable to move at all. Airspace Tianlun. Sword of the Three. However, before Arya could activate his magic, 3 sharp sword lights cut through his space. Lucy and Wendy suddenly felt their bodies lighten and quickly distanced themselves from Arya. Just as Ian expected, Jose sent people to attack Lucy and Wendy. 3 figures walked out of the darkness. It was Aisha, Urusha, and Myra. Fairy Queen Urza, Witch Urusha, Demon Myra Jane. Arya was suddenly shocked. Urza, Tia, Myra. Lucy and Wendy looked at the 3 women in front of them with surprise. They were glad that the crisis was resolved, but they were also very confused as to why they were here. Ian heard from certain channels that Phantom was planning to attack us, so he asked us to come and help you. Myra's eyelids twitched slightly, and she spoke a little unnaturally. Arya, one of the 4 elements. With one hand on his waist, he looked at Arya with disdain. You attacked our guild members. It seems that you are ready for war. In that case, we have to do our best. Arya removed the bandage covering her eyes, revealing a pair of strange eyes that were split into 4 petals. His eyes! Lucy and Wendy exclaimed in surprise. It is said that Arya of the 4 elements usually covers her eyes in order to suppress her amazing magic power. Urusha said lightly, with a hint of contempt in her tone. Compared to her, who had been unable to bear the powerful magic since childhood, Arya's behavior was like showing off one's skills in front of an expert, which was laughable. As Arya completely released her magic power, a storm suddenly arose on the ground, sweeping up the dust and small gravel on the ground. The strong wind pressure turned into a field-like existence, swallowing up everyone. Death Space Zero. The strong wind blew Arya's clothes, and a cruel and arrogant smile appeared on his cheeks. This airspace will devour all life. Fall, fairy. However, Tianlun 5-star sword. Urusha and Myra didn't even make a move. Urza changed into a silver-white armor and rushed to Arya at an extremely fast speed. The 2 swords in his hands drew a pentagram shape in the air. With a scream, Urza easily broke through the death zone that Arya was so proud of, and a pentagram-shaped wound appeared on his chest. The backlash from the broken magic made him feel as if his internal organs were burning. You are so arrogant that you want to take people's lives so easily. What's the difference between your behavior and those of the Dark Guild? Urza pointed his sword at Arya and said coldly. Impossible, you can actually cut off my airspace. Arya, who was severely injured, half knelt on the ground, looking at Urza in disbelief. Dash. Is this difficult? Urusha and Myra came over with Lucy and Wendy. Their contemptuous attitude deeply hurt Arya's fragile self-esteem. If the magic you are proud of is only this level, then we can easily break it. We can't. Lucy and Wendy, with tears streaming down their faces, complained silently in their hearts that they seemed to be holding back. This is impossible. Arya couldn't believe this fact. He suddenly jumped up and used his remaining magic power to release dozens of impact bombs, airspace absolute. Then Arya turned around and tried to run away, but before he could take 2 steps, he was kicked hard to the ground. He turned over with difficulty and saw that he had received the soul of Satan. Of Myra. You want to escape after attacking our guild members? Arusha looked down at Arya with a sneer on her face. She patted Arya's cheek like a gangster. You need power and background to get involved. Phantom can't protect you, even if Jose comes. I said. Then Arusha waved her hand, and in front of Lucy and Wendy's shocked gazes, Urza and Myra immediately stepped forward, each grabbing Arya's arm and dragging him out of town. At this moment, Arya suddenly remembered the origin of Arusha's title of witch, but it was too late. He had completely lost his fighting ability and could not put up any effective resistance. He could only watch in despair as Urza and Myra dragged him to the forest outside the city. Soon, a creepy scream sounded in the forest outside Onibus, startling a large number of birds. That night, both the animals living in the forest and the people living in the city were frightened by the screams and could not fall asleep. From then on, the rumor that the forest outside Onibus town was haunted spread. Chapter 55. When the first Phantom Lord Wizard arrived outside the guild headquarters, he was horrified by what he saw. All he saw was his ace wizard, 2 of the 4 elements, Arya of the sky, and Soul of the earth, lying outside his tavern. Arya's body was covered with wounds and he was already in a coma. He looked like he had been through some kind of torture, especially his face, which was swollen 3 times. If someone was not very familiar with him, they would not even be able to recognize his identity. Compared to the unconscious Arya, Soul seemed to be in better condition. Although his eyes were dull and drooling, he was at least awake and there were no injuries on his body. But after Jose asked a doctor and a healing magician to check on 907, they found that Soul's injuries were far more serious than Arya's. It was as if someone had used a powerful mental force to forcefully enter his brain and violently stirred it, causing great damage to his spirit and mental health. If the other party had not shown mercy, Soul might have been forced to be a fool for the rest of his life. Even so, he would need at least several years to recover, and he would have been lying on the hospital bed like a vegetable for a long time, unable to move. President, who on earth dared to attack our Phantom Guild? The Phantom Guild members were immediately furious. They were the strongest wizard guild in Fiore, and someone dared to attack them, even their trump card. Jose Porla had a gloomy face. What Soul and Arya did was not allowed to be seen in public. Therefore, he couldn't even tell the members of his own guild that the 2 of them were beaten up like this by fairy tales people. However, even if Jose didn't say anything, many people still pointed the finger at fairy tale. After all, the conflict between the 2 guilds was almost exposed, and both sides had been displeased with each other for a long time. We can't let this go, President Jose, we have to report to the meeting. Let's fight, someone in the crowd shouted angrily. His words quickly gained the support of the majority. The only few people who could still remain rational had a look of worry on their faces. Not to mention that they have no evidence to prove that it was Fairy Tale who did it. Once the war starts, Phantom will inevitably receive extremely severe punishment from the council. What's more, Arya and Soul are still lying in hospital beds, and half of their trump cards have been damaged before the battle even started. What can they use to fight Fairy Tale? Fortunately, Jose Porla did not seem to be blinded by anger. He suppressed his anger and suppressed the voices of war in the guild. The only thing that worried them was that Jose's every move seemed to be preparing for war. I will take care of this matter. Now everyone must stay in the guild and are not allowed to go out. At the same time, recall all those who are out on missions. Jose then left in a hurry. Before leaving, he glanced at the silent Gajeel and Juvia in the crowd, as well as the thoughtful Todomaru. After returning to the office, Jose opened a secret room and walked in. The secret room was empty except for a table with a crystal ball on it. Jose injected magic power into the crystal ball, a purple light lit up, and soon a voice came from the crystal ball. It looks like you've made your decision. Stop talking nonsense. I want to go to war with Fairy Tale. Jose Porla's expression looked a little ugly. I can help you contain Ian Bell, said the voice in the crystal ball. Not enough. Jose said coldly, you still have to help me lure away Urusha, Urza, Myra Jane, Laxus, and Mist Ogden. The people on the other side of the crystal ball were suddenly speechless. Why don't you just ask me to help you contain all the S-class wizards in fairy tale? The person on the other side of the crystal ball didn't say anything, but Jose was not in a hurry because he believed that the other party would compromise. Isn't the ruler of Phantom the strongest wizard guild in the kingdom of Fiore? The other party's voice sounded a little angry, as if he was irritated by Jose's greed. Arya and Sol were severely injured by them last night. Gajeel, Juvia, and Todomaru have been pretending to obey me. I even suspect that one of them is a traitor, otherwise why would Sol and Arya's actions be known to fairy tale? The person on the other side of the crystal ball fell silent again. He really wanted to say that with that person's strength, there was no need to resort to such tricks. But this time he guessed wrong. As the number one wizard with unexpected abilities, Ian, who is completely capable of going beyond the rules, chose to play the game with Phantom within the rules. What's more, what you want is the vacant seat on the council, which is not something that can be done easily. This time, the person on the other side of the crystal ball was silent for 5 or 6 minutes, and finally he agreed to Jose's request. You'd better not lie to me, otherwise death will be a luxury for you. Even through the crystal ball, Jose could sense the murderous intent in the other person's words. He felt as if he saw a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and cold sweat soaked his clothes unconsciously. Who are they? Jose Porla began to regret having reached a cooperation agreement with the 5.7 party. However, there was no regret medicine in the world. Even if there was an abyss with no end in sight, he could only jump in with his eyes closed. Otherwise, it would be the Phantom Lord and him who would be destroyed. At the same time, Urza, Lucy, and Wendy returned to the guild and reported to Makarov what happened last night. Makarov was terrified and extremely angry when he learned that Phantom dared to attack his own members. This time, Urza and the others protected Lucy and Wendy, but what about next time? What if other people in the guild were also attacked? Thinking of this, Makarov, who was originally a little hesitant, immediately made up his mind. It's decided, let's start the war. Chapter 56. Jose never dreamed that fairy tale would come to his door before he could declare war. In 3 days, dozens of towns and hundreds of branches in the kingdom of Fiore were all killed. Makarov even sent all the Phantom flags he had confiscated back to the Phantom headquarters. This is absolutely a naked provocation. Bang! Jose was furious and kicked the table in front of him. The table flew over everyone's heads and hit the wall heavily, breaking into pieces immediately. The ghosts below were all frightened and trembling with fear when they saw this. Makarov. Fairy tale. Jose couldn't understand why Makarov, who was always weak, acted so tough this time. He even dared to violate the rules of the council and actively declared war on them. Wasn't he afraid that the guild would be disbanded? But whether he believed it or not, it was an indisputable fact that the once glorious Phantom had now been completely wiped out, with only an isolated headquarters left. Thinking of this, Jose left the 23 guild members who were distraught and anxious, and hurried back to the secret room and contacted the mysterious man again. Fairy tale has declared war on us. How long will it take for the support you promised to arrive? Jose suppressed his anger and roared in a very low and suppressed tone. You can declare war on fairy tale right now. The man on the other side of the crystal ball said in a nonchalant tone, as if dealing with fairy tale was as easy as eating and drinking water for him. Jose's expression was a little uncertain, he didn't know if the other party was playing a trick on him. But for the ghost now, except to believe the other party, he had no way out. After Jose returned to the guild tavern lobby, everyone in the Phantom was still talking about it. Apart from hoping that the council could intervene in time to stop fairy tale, no one seemed to see any hope of a comeback. He looked around the guild and saw that the crowd had thinned out. Apparently, during his absence, someone had quietly left the guild, which seemed to have no future. Quiet! Jose's deep voice rang out in the guild tavern, and everyone turned their eyes to him. Next, I will declare war on fairy tale immediately. If any of you want to quit, there is still a chance. Jose said lightly. Everyone in the guild looked at each other in bewilderment. No one expected Jose to make such a decision. After a brief thought, some people immediately chose to quit Spectre. What surprised Jose a little was that Gajeel, Juvia, and Todomaru, who he had always considered to be traitors, all chose to stay. President, isn't it too risky to declare war on fairy tale now? Todomaru advised tactfully, perhaps we can ask the council to intervene. It's too late. Jose said calmly, but don't worry, I've already found a support base. After hearing these words, the anxious mood of the ghost people was relieved a lot. Todomaru seemed to want to say something, but after seeing Jose's gloomy expression, he swallowed the words back. Jose then turned his attention to Gajeel and Juvia. My only target is the fire dragon. Gajeel's expression was very calm, as if he didn't care about the current situation of the guild. Juvia didn't agree, but Juvia chose to support it. After receiving a satisfactory answer, Jose began to make preparations before the war. On the other side, Magnolia, unlike Phantom's dullness and confusion, Fairy Tale was in a celebratory atmosphere. I've been wanting to teach those arrogant guys a lesson. Macau had a bandage on his hand, but his emotions were very high. Previously, because Makarov had always advocated a policy of avoidance, they had suffered a lot at the hands of the Phantom, and this time they finally got rid of their anger. You guys are acting like we're the villains right now. Ian leaned against the bar, looking at Macau, who was proudly showing off how he taught Phantom a lesson, and said jokingly. The guild immediately burst into laughter. And amidst the noise and laughter of everyone, 10 little blue birds flew in from outside. Ian Bell, there's a letter for you. The little blue bird dropped the letter in front of Ian and flew away. Someone actually sent a letter to Ian. Natsu was shocked, as if he had seen something incredible. Isn't there some kind of magic of unknown origin? Bang! As soon as Natsu finished speaking, he received a warm greeting from Ian, and a bump immediately appeared on his head. There was only one sentence in the letter, but when Ian read it, a deep look flashed in his eyes. Phoenix Priestess? What is that? 533. Is it the same thing as Wendy? Natsu asked confusedly after glancing at the contents of the letter. You idiot, Wendy is not Dong, Ba, I mean the Sky Priestess is just Wendy's title, not a thing. Gray, who was almost fooled by Natsu, glared at him unhappily. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and secretly thanked himself for reacting quickly enough. Ian did not give any explanation, but burned the letter and looked at Makarov. I need to leave for a while. Makarov nodded. He understood what Ian meant, be careful. Don't worry about the guild. Jose can't do anything wrong. Ian then left the guild. But less than half a day after he left, a land the size of an island with a guild building on its back appeared outside the city of Magnolia, supported by 6 spider-like metal legs. Then a window at the top of the building opened, and a cannon barrel stretched out. Along with it, Jose's extremely cold voice rang out. Magic Cluster Cannon Jupiter, ready. Chapter 57. Outside the barberry tree C, a man with short white hair, tattoos under his eyes and bandaged hands sat quietly on a stone. It was Erriger, the trump card of Eisenwald, who was beaten up by Myra during the lullaby incident. But perhaps it would be more appropriate to call him Ignatius Grays now. It turned out that Erriger had luckily escaped the capture of the council because of Kageyama. Unfortunately, he was controlled by Ignatius Grays again not long after his escape. At this moment, besides Ignatius Woods Grays himself, there was also a brown-haired girl and a very cute little duck lying next to him. I don't know whether to say this guy is lucky or unlucky, he was targeted by you twice. Ian slowly descended from the sky, looked at Ignatius Woods and said, can't you find someone else to trouble him? The tangible body is nothing but a dispensable shell. Only eternity is the true meaning of life. Ignatius Woods said lightly. I never expected that you could make insidiousness and cunning sound so refreshing. Ian exclaimed. Ignatius Woods' face immediately darkened, but he did not forget his purpose. Ian Bell, you shouldn't have forgotten her. Ignatius Woods roughly dragged the brown-haired girl in front of him, and the unconscious girl couldn't help but groan in pain. A red halo appeared on Ignatius Woods' palm, and a red magic circle appeared on the girl's neck. Gray, I'm very happy that you wrote to me today. But I don't like what you are doing now. Ian said lightly. When Ignatius Woods heard the word uncle, his face turned even darker, and he wished he could sew up Ian's wound right there and then. If you want to save her, just stay here honestly. Ignatius Woods said calmly, suppressing his anger. You're really willing to help Phantom, and you're not afraid of losing everything. Ian curled his lips and sat down directly. When he received the letter, he had already guessed Ignatius Woods' purpose. Don't worry about that. Ignatius Woods sneered. Seeing Ian compromise, he felt indescribably happy in his heart. It's such a waste of time just sitting here, why don't we chat? Ian said with his chin propped up, sounding a little bored. What are you talking about? Ignatius Woods immediately became alert. Don't be nervous. I won't take advantage of you. Let's just talk about it, surprise. Ian chuckled, you did a good job of scheming me back then. There was a glimmer of pride in Ignatius Wood's eyes. That was one of the few times he got to take advantage of his uncle. Bah, this BD, but uncle has prepared a surprise for you today. Ian continued with a smile, look back. Ian Bell, you don't think you can deceive me with such a trick, do you? Ignatius Wood said coldly, with the blessing of the father, ordinary people can't get close to me at all. Has the most basic trust between people disappeared? Ian sighed. Ignatius Woods was about to taunt her when he suddenly felt a gust of wind coming from behind him. He was startled and subconsciously let go of the brown-haired girl, rolling forward in embarrassment. Puff. However, Ignatius Woods was still a step too slow, and a scepter cut his back, leaving a wound deep enough to see the bone. What a pity. Myra took back the scepter with a little regret. Ignatius Woods looked at Myra in disbelief. The rich power of the moon goddess on the other person was like the arrival of the moon goddess herself. Whole body reception, the soul of God, Selene. Ian said with a smile, well, uncle didn't lie to you. Surprise or not, unexpected or not. With just a little thought, Ignatius Woods could guess where Myra's power came from. Thinking of this, he was even more angry. Compared with the previous situation, the current situation has undergone a 180-degree reversal. The bargaining chip he used to coerce Ian no longer had any deterrent effect after Myra, who possessed the power of the moon goddess, appeared. Not only that, if he wants to continue to hold Ian back after being seriously injured, he will have to face the double threat from Myra and Ian. Let me remind you, if he doesn't get effective treatment, he won't survive. Ian pointed to the blood that kept flowing down Ignatius Wood's back. He could feel the life force of Erriger growing weaker and weaker. Ignatius Woods knew his current situation very well. Once Erriger died, it would not be easy for him to find another useful body. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally chose to turn around and leave. As for the brown-haired girl, the moment he saw Myra, he knew that the magic he had cast on her would not work. Do you want to chase, Nyo How? Myra looked at Ignatius Woods as departing back, a cold light flashed in her eyes. She is different now than she was during the lullaby incident. In the state of God's soul, she is already able to hurt Ignatius Woods. This is why Ian asked her to come with him alone. No need, it's just a substitute, even if it's destroyed it won't have much impact on him. Ian shook his head. Let's go back to the guild. It's time to deal with the ghost. Then, Myra picked up the yellow duck, while Ian carried the brown-haired girl, and they rushed towards Magnolia as fast as possible. Meanwhile, in Magnolia, the battle between Fairy Tale and Phantom was already in full swing. Chapter 58. Magnolia. Hearing the noise outside, everyone in Fairy Tale rushed out of the guild. What came into view was a small island with a huge building on its back and metal legs like spider legs approaching Magnolia along the river, and finally stopped outside Magnolia City. Under the horrified gaze of the citizens of Magnolia, a cannon barrel protruded from the top of the building. A huge magic circle lit up at the muzzle, and magic power continued to charge the magic circle. Then the voice of Phantom Lord's president, Jose Porla, came from inside the building. Magic cluster cannon Jupiter, ready. This is a city, Jose, how dare he? Makarov shouted in shock and anger. He never thought that the other party would dare to use such a powerful and destructive magic in such a densely populated city. Makarov, perish with Fairy Tale. Jose's ferocious roar came from inside the building through the magic circle. As he finished speaking, the magic cluster cannon Jupiter was fired. The purple-black magic beam filled with the aura of destruction headed towards the Fairy 897's Tail Guild headquarters in the center of Magnolia City with overwhelming force. I will never let you succeed. A look of determination flashed across Makarov's old face. He resolutely stood between Jupiter and the guild, and a golden magic circle lit up in front of him. Defense magic circle, 3 pillars of God. With a roar, 3 columnar magic circles rose up. The magic cluster cannon Jupiter bombarded the magic circle, and the golden and purple-black magic cancelled each other out. Finally, when the last magic circle was shattered, the power of the magic cluster cannon Jupiter was already at its end, and was wiped out by Makarov with a wave of his hand. Although he blocked the first shot, Makarov also suffered heavy losses. He knew that he must not let Jose successfully fire the second shot, otherwise the entire Magnolia would suffer. Makarov's body suddenly began to swell violently, and a few seconds later he turned into a giant standing in front of the island carrying the Phantom headquarters. Then he stretched out a huge hand and grabbed the magic cluster cannon that was starting to charge again. Kill him! With Jose's angry roar, the magic cluster cannon Jupiter fired again. But this time, before Jupiter's magic power even rushed out of the barrel, Makarov's huge fist had already landed on the barrel. Accompanied by a deafening explosion, Makarov's arrogant body was knocked backwards by the shock wave generated by the explosion of the magic cluster cannon. The Phantom headquarters also shook violently in this wave of explosions, and even the metal legs that served as supports were broken, causing the Phantom base above to fall into the water, creating a wave. President. When the people of Fairy Tale saw Makarov's body return to normal size, they rushed forward. When Urza helped Makarov up, everyone found that his arms were hanging unnaturally on both sides of his body, his arms were shaking constantly, and his palms were charred. It was obvious that he had been seriously injured in the confrontation with the magic cluster cannon. Urza, it's all up to you from now on. Makarov said weakly. We will not let them destroy the guild. Urza showed a resolute expression. She handed Makarov to Myra and sent him back to the guild for treatment. She and Arusha led the remaining guild members to face the attack of the spectre. So what if the magic cluster cannon is destroyed? Jose's cold voice sounded, and black ghost-like creatures flew out from the top of the ghost building. In an instant, the sky above Magnolia was covered by dark ghost soldiers. At the same time, the huge building of Phantom began to deform, and soon a deterrent magical giant appeared outside Magnolia. Without Maka love, you are just a group of lambs to be slaughtered. Lamb. Arusha's lips curled up slightly, and the white magic power burst out like a flame visible to the naked eye. A cold wind like that blowing from the Arctic glaciers blew across Magnolia. In the blink of an eye, the ghost soldiers in the sky were annihilated in this gust of cold wind. At the same time, the magic giant that had just completed its transformation also lost its ability to move in the cold wind. It seemed that after a long time, all parts of its body had aged, and it fell to the river in a half-kneeling posture. Jose's expression, which had just relaxed for a few seconds, turned gloomy again when he saw this. Fairy Tale, who no longer had any worries, immediately swept away the previous haze, and rushed forward in a swarm amid Natsu's roar, and fought with the swarming Phantom Lord wizards. Urza, I leave this to you. I'll go find Jose. In the chaos, Ultear froze several Phantom Flame members who were rushing towards her, then turned into a stream of light and rushed directly to the top of the magic giant. Jose's voice came from there. In the crowd, Natsu was excitedly punching a spectre member like a kid, but suddenly an iron rod rushed out from the side and knocked him away. Fire Dragon, your opponent is me. Gajeel looked at Natsu provocatively, and he was almost about to carve a beat me up on his face. Natsu rolled twice in the air, and finally managed to stabilize himself on the edge of the magic giant using his hands and feet. But when he looked up at Gajeel, his nose twitched slightly, and a hint of doubt flashed across his face. Who are you and why do you smell like Uncle Ian? Gajeel Red Fox, Iron Dragon Slayer. Fire Dragon, there is only one dragon that can fly in this sky. Gajeel's lips curled up into an evil smile, but Natsu's next move froze his smile. But Wendy is also a dragon slayer. Natsu said carelessly. Following his gaze, Gajeel saw the little girl who was hiding in a corner with Lucy to attack the Phantom Wizard, and he suddenly felt uneasy. Is he going to fight this little thing? Wouldn't that be a bit too beastly? Just when Gajeel was doubting his life, Natsu suddenly rushed up and knocked him away with a flaming headbutt. You just attacked me, and now I'm back. Natsu grinned, his fists suddenly burst into flames, and then he shouted and rushed towards Gajeel again. Gajeel stopped thinking about it and focused on fighting with Natsu. The two of them punched and kicked each other, and fire and steel flew up. If the people around were not careful, they would be affected. In just a short while, a large area of open space was cleared around them. Chapter 59. While Natsu and Gajeel were fighting fiercely, Grey and Urza, who had already made their way into the Magic Titan, also encountered their opponents. In the lobby of the bottom floor of the Magic Giant, Grey encountered Totomaru of the Four Elements of Fire. Facing the opponent's powerful fire control ability, Grey, who used ice-shaping magic, was once at a disadvantage. But Grey is at least a wizard who can fight Natsu on equal terms. After a short period of adaptation, the two wizards, both of whom are style wizards, started a fierce clash. In the end, Grey froze Totomaru's flames with his superior ice magic, and then chopped him to the ground with two ice swords. Compared to Natsu, whose brains were almost beaten out, and Grey, who won after a fierce battle. Urza's battle was much more dramatic. She met the last of the four elements, Juvia the rain girl. The two looked at each other for a long time, and finally it was Aisha who spoke first. Are you sure you want to stop me, Juvia? Urza said coolly, and from his tone it seemed that he was no stranger to Juvia. In fact, the two did know each other. The story dates back to 5 years ago, 1 year after the joint campaign against the Blood Forest. When Ian and Urza went out to work one time, they came to a town that was covered by rain all year round. There they met a lonely and melancholy little girl. Perhaps out of pity, when Ian saw her sitting alone under a big tree by the river, he somehow gave her some chicken soup for the soul. It was not until they met again at work that Ian realized she was Juvia. Unfortunately, Juvia had already joined Phantom Lord at that time. Juvia doesn't want to fight Urza's sister, but Juvia must fight Urza's sister. Juvia looked at Urza with a determined look. However, just as she finished her words, a serrated sword that looked extremely heavy fell to the ground, making a loud noise and creating a medium-sized hole in the ground. Juvia's pupils shrank slightly, and after a moment of silence, she moved aside very willingly. Juvia tried her best, but lost. The reversal was so fast that even Jose, who had been watching the battle on the top floor of the magic giant, almost sprained his waist. Urza couldn't help but laugh. When they first met, Ian had told Juvia a lot of his twisted theories, and now it seemed like she really listened to them. Urza ended the battle effortlessly and continued to move forward. When she passed by Juvia, she extended an olive branch to her with a smile on her face. Juvia, come to Fairy Tale after this battle. Juvia was slightly stunned when she heard this, and when she came to her senses, Urza's figure had disappeared at the end of the passage. Jose was naturally furious when he saw this scene. He smashed everything around him in rage. The violent magic power set off a violent storm in the room, blowing away those who were operating the magic giant. Traitor, waste. Calm down, President Jose. You haven't lost yet. At this time, the man in black robe holding a staff who had been standing next to Jose said lightly. Calm down. Jose sneered. That's easy for you to say. So far, apart from helping me improve the magic cluster cannon, the promised reinforcements have never appeared. Now Fairy Tale is almost in front of me, how can you expect me to stay calm? The man in black robe was silent for a few seconds before speaking again. President Jose may not have noticed that Fairy Tale's other two S-class wizards, Laxus and Mistaugen, have never appeared. You mean just 2 people killed all your people? Jose sneered. The man in black robe nearly vomited blood when he heard this, and the pair of cold eyes hidden under his hat also flashed with some hostility. President Jose had better pray that they can arrive in time. The man in black robe said sarcastically. Jose's face suddenly darkened, his back teeth were almost broken, and his clenched fists made a BG sound. However, no matter how angry he was, he had no intention of turning against the other party for the time being. But before my people arrive, President Jose had better solve the current problem first. Sensing the cold air approaching rapidly outside the room, the man in black robe sneered and disappeared as a phantom. A few seconds later, your door was suddenly covered with a layer of frost, and then with a loud bang, the door shattered, and the scattered iron blocks hit the wall and even embedded themselves into the wall. Arusha walked in from outside, emitting a strong chill. Her black hair fluttered without wind, and her surging magic power like blaze distorted the space. As expected of Arusha, the witch, you have the strength comparable to that of the 10 wizard saints at such a young age. Jose said coldly, with a hint of jealousy on his face, but why did you choose to join Fairy Tale? Obviously, Phantom Lord is the strongest guild in the kingdom of Fiori. It's none of your business, Arusha said coldly. Hearing Arusha's answer, Jose Porla's jealousy intensified. His face was distorted by jealousy, and purple-black magic power surged around him. The evil aura continued to erode his sanity, making him more and more crazy. The magic powers of the two collided in the air, and in an instant, the sky and the earth changed color, lightning flashed, thunder roared, and the river surged. Dark cracks appeared in the sky, and the earth began to tremble violently, as if the end of the world had come. Jose just waved his hand lightly, and several purple-black magic arrows shot towards Eurasia. Seeing this, Arusha did not dodge or evade, and the cold air in front of her body turned into a barrier. The black arrow pierced into the barrier and was like sinking into a quagmire, and was quickly wrapped and annihilated. Dark spiral. Jose attacked again. A huge amount of magic power gathered in his palm and stabbed at Arusha like a spiral spear. The arc of time, reversal. The grey-white magic circle flickered, and Jose seemed to see an illusory clock appear behind Arusha. The hands of the clock moved counterclockwise, and the purple-black spiral spear that had pierced Arusha suddenly stopped, and then turned into wisps of pure magic power and dissipated in the air. Death storm. Jose was furious and used his strongest magic. His hands gathered a large amount of dark magic power, which was so powerful that the space fluctuated and even cracked. He used this magic power to create a powerful shock wave to attack Arusha. The violent explosion engulfed Arusha, and the smoke and flames instantly blocked Jose's vision. But Jose was not satisfied with this. His 5 fingers condensed small magic balls. The continuous explosions caused the flying dust to spread continuously, and soon covered almost half of the room. Jose bombarded for nearly half a minute, until Arusha's breath completely disappeared. He finally stopped, with a grim expression on his face. This is what happens when you go against me. Chapter 60. While Arusha was fighting fiercely with Jose. On the plains west of Magnolia, Laxus and Mistoggan also engaged in a fierce battle with others. I never thought that the day would come when I would join forces with you. Laxus crossed his arms in front of his chest, his whole body flashing with lightning, and said to Mistoggan beside him with a defiant look and a hint of contempt. I didn't expect to see you here. Mistoggan's deep voice contained a hint of teasing. Laxus's eyes flashed with a hint of embarrassment, but he quickly covered it up with a haughty look. Fairy tale is mine, I will never allow anyone to covet it. Mistoggan chuckled noncommittally. Thunder and rage. Laxus, as if his thoughts were seen through, suddenly felt ashamed and angry, and his 070 magic power suddenly exploded. The roar of thunder and lightning resounded through the sky, gathering into golden thunderclouds above their heads, and then pouring down on their enemies like a rainstorm. The 5 people who were blocked by Laxus and Mistoggan were speechless and a little angry when they saw this. You are angry with us because you are angry with us somewhere else? Do you really think we are soft persimmons? The 5 people scattered and dodged Laxus's attack, staring at him with unfriendly expressions. I heard everything, your inner weakness. The short-haired young man Cobra looked arrogant. He touched his pet, Kyuberios, with a provocative smile on his face. When Laxus heard this, a cold light flashed in his eyes, accompanied by a flash of lightning, and he suddenly appeared in front of the red-haired young man, and smashed down heavily with his fist wrapped in lightning. However, at this critical moment, Lisa, with yellow coxcomb hair and glasses, suddenly appeared between Laxus and Cobra, and kicked Laxus away unexpectedly. I've never lost to anyone in terms of speed. Lightning spear. Laxus flew backwards and condensed a powerful electric current in his hand, which turned into a golden spear and swung it at the 2 people. I heard everything, all your thoughts and intentions. Cobra jumped out from behind Lisa with a grin, and the magic power in his mouth gathered into a scarlet poison mist and sprayed it towards Laxus. The roar of the dragon. After flipping in the air and landing, Laxus had no time to adjust his posture. He immediately opened his mouth, and powerful magic accumulated in his lungs, turning into a torrent of lightning and spewing out. The roar of the thunder dragon. The lightning destroyed the poisonous fog with great force, and rushed straight towards Cobra and Lisa without any weakening in momentum. The 2 who were unable to dodge were submerged in a golden ocean in an instant. However, when the lightning faded, a huge sandball appeared in front of Laxus. The sandball fell apart, revealing Cobra and Lisa inside, who were still in shock but unharmed. Is this guy a monster? The 2 looked at Laxus with horror in their eyes, and a trace of fear appeared on their faces. They had never encountered such a powerful opponent in the dark world for many years. If Otai hadn't acted in time, they would probably have been lying down now. Even companions have to pay. The tall Otai held a book in his hand and always had a sacred expression when talking about money. 3 people? So what if 5 of them come together? Laxus tore off the coat draped over his back and said arrogantly. And his attitude completely angered Cobra and others. The 2 fangs of the poisonous dragon. Cobra took the lead in launching the attack. He transformed the poison mist into 2 giant tooth-like fangs and attacked Laxus. Laxus did not dodge or evade. Wearing the lightning armor, he isolated Cobra's all-powerful poison gas outside. At the same time, he also made it impossible for Lisa, who was waiting for an opportunity to approach and try to launch an attack, to start. Then Laxus turned into a flash of lightning again and appeared in front of Cobra, and his fist, filled with powerful lightning, hit Cobra's chest heavily. Cobra suddenly felt paralyzed all over, and his eyes bulged suddenly. He was like a collision with a high-speed train, and the whole person flew out like a cannonball, and then fell heavily to the ground, shaking up a lot of dust. This process took less than 3 seconds. Before Otai and Lisa could even react, Cobra was already seriously injured and fell into a coma. Swamp. Seeing that one of his companions fell in a short moment, Otai did not dare to hold back any longer. His magic power penetrated into the soil, controlling the ground under Lax's feet to turn into a swamp. However, Laxus simply directed lightning into the earth to break Otai's magic. Thunder Dragon Halberd. He then gathered a large amount of magic power in his palm, condensed it into a Thunder Dragon Halberd and threw it directly at Otai. Otai did not dare to be careless and quickly dodged to the side, but he was still numbed all over by the lightning that passed in front of him. Confess your sins in the thunder and lightning. Just as Otai was momentarily distracted by the paralysis, Laxus appeared behind him, clenched his hands, and smashed down on Otai's head with lightning. However, wool wall. A ball of pink, cloud-like wool blocked the way between Otai and Laxus. The wool seemed soft and vulnerable, but it was extremely elastic and ductile. Laxus's attack was like being stuck in a quagmire, unable to move forward. Sumimasai. Seeing the gaze from Laxus, the cute girl with double horns on her head began to tremble like a frightened deer. And 4.5 gel, if you were 1 second later I would have to go accompany that Cobra guy. Otai jumped a few times to distance himself from Laxus and landed next to the girl with short white hair. You're so long-winded. Do you think I have it easy? Angel said with an unhappy look on his face. While Otai and the other two were fighting Laxus, she and Midnight also had a fierce battle with Mist Ogden. But the man was like a hedgehog. Even if she tried her best, she couldn't break through his defense, and she was almost injured by the magic that bounced back. Even Midnight once fell into the illusion created by the other party. Finally, with the help of Lisa, who was helpless in the face of Laxus, she finally got rid of Mist Ogden's entanglement and saved Otai in time. Chapter 61. These two people are just like two monsters. Feeling the oppressive lightning magic lingering around Laxus, Angel's forehead was covered with a few drops of cold sweat. What kind of enemy are we fighting? Looking at Midnight and Lisa who were trapped by Mist Ogden's magic circle on the other side, Angel couldn't help but feel a little bit of retreat. But how could Laxus give him a chance to escape? Golden lightning filled the sky, and the humming sound of thunder resounded through the sky. Laxus was bathed in the sea of lightning, like the god of thunder descending to the world. Dragon-killing secret technique, thunder. Ares, stop him. The flashing lightning continued to grow in Angel's eyes, and she screamed in fear of death. At her command, Ares placed a thick layer of wool around her. However, facing Laxus's violent lightning, the layer of wool was as fragile as paper. It was easily broken through. Seeing the lightning getting closer and closer to him, Angel grabbed Ares and blocked it in front of him. Amidst a series of shrill screams, Ares, whose body was charred by the lightning, turned into a bubble and returned to the celestial spirit world. But Otai obviously didn't have such good luck. In the sky full of lightning, he was electrocuted and fainted before he could even scream. Open, Gemini Gate. Facing the powerful and oppressive Laxus, Angel, who was without celestial spirit, obviously had no sense of security. After Ares returned to the celestial spirit world with serious injuries, she immediately took out a zodiac key and summoned two blue little people with two tentacles on their heads. Gemini, hurry up and become like him. Angel shouted in fear. The two blue figures immediately flew towards Laxus, dodged the lightning swung by Laxus at an extremely fast speed, and passed by him, brushing his hair. Then the two little men collided, and with a flash of golden light, another Laxus appeared. Oh, interesting, you can actually become me. Laxus raised a scornful arc at the corner of his mouth. At this time, Gemini seemed to be still getting familiar with this body and its abilities. Hey, his power is too strong, I can't copy it all. Gemini whispered. Angel showed a look of horror when she heard this. This was the first time she encountered such a situation after summoning Gemini. It seemed that seeing the embarrassment of Angel and Gemini, Laxus' smile widened. He turned into lightning and instantly appeared in front of his pirated self, throwing a heavy punch. Thunder Dragon's Collapse Fist. Thunder Dragon's Blast Fist. Although he knew he was no match for the opponent, in order to buy Angel time to escape, Jamie still used the same move as Laxus to face the enemy head-on. However, after just a brief encounter, Gemini transformed into Laxus and flew backwards. Before he landed on the ground, he exploded into a cloud of smoke and turned back into the state of two blue men. There's nothing we can do. It's crackling. In the flashing lightning, following Ares, Gemini was also sent back to the celestial spirit world by Laxus. If you have no other means, then lie down. Laxus approached Angel step by step, and the lightning around him struck the ground around him, bursting into sparks. But just when Laxus was about to completely deal with Angel, a green beam of light suddenly shot out from the side. If Laxus had not reacted quickly enough, he would have been pierced through like the boulder that was hit. Eternal Dark Rondo. There were several green spiral beams in succession. Feeling threatened, Laxus had to step back and was forced to move away from the prey that was about to be caught. Triple Magic Circle, Water Mirror. At the same time, Mist Ogden, who had completely trapped Midnight and Lisa, was also attacked and had to pull his hands out to resist, causing Midnight and Lisa to take the opportunity to rush out of the magic circle. A man holding a magic wand, with white hair and several lines drawn on his dark skin, slowly walked out. I didn't expect that just 2 people would cause the loss of more than half of the 6 demons I carefully assembled. Brain said with a gloomy face. If it weren't for the sudden disappearance of 2 of his living link magics, he wouldn't even suspect that Brain and the other 4 had betrayed him. I didn't expect that Oration Cease, one of the Balam Alliance, would be so weak. Laxus said sarcastically. Although he felt a great threat from the man in front of him, and his magic power was greatly depleted after the battle, Laxus was not inferior in momentum. Wars are never won with words. Brain said calmly. He raised the wand in his hand and waved it forward. Laxus and Mist Ogden only felt the air around them suddenly twisted, and then they were engulfed by a violent explosion. Triple Magic Circle, Water Mirror. As 3 overlapping magic circles lit up, blue light shot straight into the sky. In the dim light of the fire, Brain saw Laxus and Mist Ogden standing unharmed in the center of the magic circle that isolated the fire. Thunder and raging waves. Laxus, who was rarely forced into such a situation, was also angry at this time. Golden thunderclouds gathered above Brain's head, and as Laxus's raised right hand fell heavily, countless lightning bolts also fell. But when the lightning faded, Brain was standing behind a green barrier, unharmed, with the wand raised again. Eternal Dark Fantasia, Sorrow. A green spiral beam of magic power wrapped in flames shot towards the 2 people at an extremely fast speed. Mist Ogden tried to use the same trick again, using the triple magic circle water mirror to bounce back Brain's attack, but Laxus was keenly aware that Brain's attack this time was completely different from the previous one. Just when Mist Ogden's 373 magic was broken by Brain's attack with overwhelming force, and even he himself was about to be pierced through, Laxus kicked him to the side in time. The magic beam passed through the 2 of them and hit a hill in the distance, instantly penetrating the hill and even dispersing the 10 clouds in the direction they were standing. Mist Ogden couldn't help but let a few drops of cold sweat slide down his forehead. If it weren't for Laxus, he would probably be a corpse now. But that's not the worst. In addition to the unexpectedly powerful Brain, they also have to face the threats of Midnight and Lisa, who are eyeing them covetously. The former is the strongest person in Oration Cease besides Brain, and the latter is the fastest person in Oration Cease. The 2 had been severely suppressed for so long, and now with Brain's restraint, their angry counterattack should not be underestimated. Just as Laxus and Mist Ogden were struggling and trying to find a chance to break through, they suddenly heard 10 frivolous but reassuring voices. The 2 immediately collided with Midnight and Lisa and quickly distanced themselves. At this moment, the white-haired young man and the white-haired girl slowly descended from mid-air. They looked at the slightly embarrassed Laxus with a playful smile on their faces, and teased, "Hey, Laxus, I haven't seen you for a while. Why are you so miserable? A mere Oration Cease has made you so embarrassed." Chapter 62. Midnight and Lisa were furious when they heard Ian's words. They were about to go up and teach him a lesson but were stopped by Brain with a serious expression. "Don't be impulsive, or you'll die," Brain warned in a low voice. "You do have some sense." Ian smiled faintly, "But I didn't expect you to dare to come to my door." Brain also secretly groaned in his heart. If he knew Ian would be back so soon, he would have run away long ago. Why would he wait until now? "Sir Ian Bell," Brain said in a deep voice. He wanted to try harder before making the final attempt. "If you are willing to let us go, I can promise that in the future, wherever fairy tale appears, Oration Cease will give way. But if you insist on doing it, then I can only choose to perish together with you. Moreover, Fairy Tale will become the target of the Balam alliance. Ha 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 ha. Ian suddenly held his stomach and laughed. Laxus, Midnight, and Lisa from Oration Cease all looked surprised when they saw this. Sorry, I think I heard a very funny joke. After a long while, until Brain could hardly hold back, Ian finally stopped laughing. He looked at Brain with 30% sarcasm and 70% nonchalant attitude. Let's not talk about whether you have the ability to perish together with your enemy. I want to see who dares to express this attitude between Mard and Hades. Arrogant and domineering. Ian's words made the scene quiet in an instant. Even Midnight and Lisa, who had been restless, were shocked by his aura. Although no one except Brain had heard of the names Mard and Hades, it did not prevent them from guessing what these two names represented. To say such things so brazenly and without scruples, one must be either an idiot or have the guts to do so. Judging from Brain's reaction, Ian is obviously the latter. Brain's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Things finally came to the point he least wanted to see. Even though he had cursed Ignawoods countless times in his heart, it did not help to change the current situation. After Ian rejected his conditions, if he did not want to sit and wait for death, he only had that one choice. The 3 remaining lines on Brain's face slowly faded away, and his image and aura suddenly changed dramatically. A destructive aura erupted in Brain's body, and the huge magic power swept everything around like a level 10 gale. The sky was filled with lightning and thunder, and the earth was shaking violently. Even the air seemed to become much hotter. Brain's neatly combed white hair suddenly spread out, and his eyes that always remained rational were replaced by scarlet eyes full of beast-like madness. His whole body exuded a terrifying aura of tyranny. Even his companions Midnight and Lisa couldn't help but stay away from him after seeing Brain like this. Chief, Chief! The magic wand that had been held in Brain's hand felt the growing power, and he couldn't help but speak tremblingly. But the next second, accompanied by a crisp sound, the wand broke into 2 parts in the middle under the powerful force of Brain. Quack! Brain said coldly, and then he turned his gaze to Ian, who was staring at him with interest. Brain, that weak guy was actually frightened by a mere reputation. Hey, there's something I've always been curious about. Is this considered schizophrenia? Ian asked interestedly. Both Myra Jane and Miss Doggan couldn't help but sweat a few drops on their foreheads, and even Lax's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Is now the time to ponder such questions? Midnight, Lisa, and Angel all looked at Ian as if he were a monster. In every sense, including in his brain circuits. Wu's face immediately darkened. He felt that Ian was really humiliating him. You will pay for your words and actions. Wu stretched out his right hand and pointed it at Ian. A huge amount of magic power burst out from his palm, and a black magic circle lit up out of thin air. Ha! Dozens of magic beams, no less powerful than the Dark Rhapsody, lament used by Brain before, were fired at Ian at the same time. Can a casual attack be so powerful? Laxus and Miss Doggan were secretly shocked when they saw this, and they also broke into a cold sweat for Ian. However, Ian did not seem to want to dodge at all. He only had a faint smile on his face, allowing the dozens of beams to engulf him. The violent explosion raised a large amount of smoke and dust, covering the figures of Ian and Myra. Wu's mouth curled up cruelly, his smile was ferocious and terrifying. The first ancestor of magic? It's just a false name. Brain, that idiot, was so easily frightened by a fool like you. You are simply a shame to the 6 demons. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Ian's voice, full of energy and a hint of sarcasm and provocation, came out from the smoke. You are so weak, are you tickling me? As a gust of wind blew away the dense smoke, Ian and Myra, unharmed, appeared in front of everyone again. If the power you are proud of is only this much, then you can go die. Ian's black pupils suddenly turned golden, emitting a powerful vayaba. Royal power. A heavy pressure suddenly descended, and the ground beneath Wu's feet instantly sank more than 10 centimeters. The strong gravity made Wu's legs and body bent down involuntarily. Midnight and Lisa, who were also affected by the royal power, behaved even more unbearably. In an instant, they fell to the ground in agony, and their bones and blood cried out in pain. So strong! Myra, who was standing next to Ian or Laxus and Miss Doggan, all were amazed to see that Wu, who was much stronger than Brain, was subdued by Ian in one move. A complicated expression flashed across Lax's face. He even tried to challenge Ian before. I remember you still have one trick up your sleeve, Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Ian said calmly, his golden pupils emitting godlike majesty. How can you repair it? Wu Xian, who was looked down upon, was furious. You are looking for death. His hands were positioned in a Tai Chi-like position, and dark magic power erupted as if from the depths of hell. Genesis. Nothing. Open, the door of the ghost, Yin De Zhao. As Wu's roar died down, countless ghosts emerged from behind him, wailing miserably and rushing towards Ian. O traveler without a soul, devour this person's soul, memories and existence. However, what surprised Wu and terrified him was that when the ghosts were about to touch Ian, they all suddenly stopped and then floated motionlessly in the air. Then a warm golden light appeared on Ian's body, shining on the ghosts, and they turned into white lights and disappeared as if they were liberated. You are the only one left. Ian looked indifferently at Wu, and the personality of brain hidden under Wu's personality. If you can withstand my next magic, Huang will spare your life. A glimmer of hope for life immediately flashed across Wu's face, but the next moment, deeper despair swallowed him up. Word spirit. Dream taper. Go and repent in your nightmares, for the children you hurt and the innocent souls who died at your hands. Chapter 63. While Ian sent Brain into an eternal nightmare to repent, the battle between Magnolia, Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord was coming to an end. Jose Porla, covered in wounds, sat slumped in the ruins of a room whose roof had been blown off, looking in disbelief at Arusha, who was also panting but still able to stand. He never thought that he would be defeated like this by a junior whom he never took seriously. Time goes back half an hour. Seeing Arusha being engulfed by his magic and having no breath left, Jose sneered arrogantly. But just as he was about to turn around and leave, a sharp sound of breaking air suddenly came from behind him. Feeling the fatal threat from behind, Jose Porla's face suddenly changed. He quickly turned sideways, but was still pierced by 10 ice-heavy spears. How is it possible? Your aura has clearly disappeared. Jose Porla turned around with difficulty, only to see Arusha standing there with broken ice scattered around her feet. You mean like this? Arusha smiled teasingly, and suddenly a layer of black light enveloped her body, and her aura instantly disappeared. This is the power of the Arc of Time. Arusha covered her body with a layer of magic power, and used the Arc of Time to pretend to be seriously injured and dying. With the least cost, she deceived the cunning Jose and successfully injured him. Jose Porla's face was extremely gloomy. He was actually tricked by a junior. His magic power began to boil violently in anger, and the ice spear was quickly melted, leaving a hollow wound. Then he waved his still movable right arm, and a purple-black magic circle appeared. Several magical arms emerged and grabbed Arusha. Arusha kept dodging and moving, and although the magic arm was very flexible under Jose's control, it still couldn't even touch the corner of Arusha's clothes. Future Flash. After avoiding Jose's heavy blow again, Arusha took advantage of the moment when Jose was running out of strength, and cold air surged in the palm of her hand. Countless ice cones emerged out of thin air and shot towards Jose like bullets. Seeing this, Jose could only roll over in a panic to dodge. The next second, with a tick-tick-tick sound, the sharp ice spike pierced into the ground. Seeing this, Jose couldn't help but sweat a few drops on his forehead. He was almost pierced by the hedgehog. But Arusha's attack was not over yet. When Jose's attention was focused on him, the ice spike that had pierced the ground suddenly melted into water and flowed along the ground to Jose's feet. By the time Jose found out, it was too late. Ice make rose garden. Countless ice thorns and roses suddenly emerged from the ground, trapping Jose tightly. The ice thorns on the roses pierced into Jose's body, and he couldn't help but let out a shrill scream. Jose, who was struggling to no avail, became ruthless and clenched his palm towards Arusha. 2 purple-black magic circles suddenly appeared beside Arusha, and the violent fluctuation of magic power made her face change suddenly. Boom boom boom. Accompanied by a roar, Arusha, whose movement speed slowed down due to the huge consumption of magic power, finally failed to avoid Jose's desperate counterattack. She was blown away by the impact of the explosion, hit a stone pillar heavily, and spit out a lot of blood. The explosion also destroyed the few remaining pillars supporting the room, and the ceiling collapsed, burying Arusha in the rubble. A few minutes later, the ceiling completely disappeared, revealing the blue sky outside. Along with the violent fluctuations of magic power, the powerful impact blew away the stones pressing on the top. Arusha finally climbed out of the ruins panting. Looking at Jose, who was slumped over with wounds all over his body and barely escaped being buried at the back of the room, Arusha spat in dissatisfaction. But she still won this Saint 10 level battle after all. How could I possibly lose? Jose's expression was extremely ferocious as he looked at Arusha, who turned away without even bothering to give him the final blow. Unwilling to accept defeat, he forced himself to support his body that was on the verge of collapse and gathered the remaining magic power in his body. Soul devouring. 2 purple-black ghosts suddenly appeared and pounced on the defenseless Arusha's back. However, Black Feather Moon Flash. With a light shout, a flash of cold light passed by. Urza, wearing black armor, held a long sword and slashed in the air in a cross pattern. 2 purple-black ghosts suddenly stopped in mid-air, and after a few seconds, they twisted and dissipated in the air. Stop it, Jose. Spectre has been defeated. Urza pointed the sword in his hand at Jose and said heroically. Seeing Urza, who was full of vigor, and Arusha, who was standing sideways with a look of disdain, Jose spat out a large mouthful of blood again, and then fainted under the double blow of failure and serious injury. Then the 2 of them walked out slowly. Seeing their figures, the members of Fairy Tail who were still fighting outside immediately burst into thunderous cheers. The members of the Phantom were becoming listless one by one. Having lost the will to fight, they simply gave up resistance and sat on the ground with frustrated faces. Juvia stood on the shoulder of the paralyzed magic giant, looking at the scene in front of her. She felt an indescribable complexity in her heart, as if the big stone that had been weighing on her heart had finally been removed. She felt the pressure on her body suddenly lighten, and she felt much more relaxed. Then she turned and left with brisk steps. Chapter 64. Gajeel, who had been beaten to a bloody pulp by Natsu and both sides were injured, was now lying in the ruins, listening to the cheers outside with an expressionless face. Can you hear me, Gajeel? Natsu, who was also lying on the ground exhausted, said with a grin. If you have to fart, just fart. Gajeel said coldly. Where did you learn Dragon Slayer magic? Natsu struggled to get up and asked Gajeel. Why should I tell you? Gajeel slowly sat up, leaning against a rock, and did not give Natsu a good look. Besides Wendy, you are the first Dragon Slayer I have ever met. Natsu asked relentlessly. Gajeel was silent for a moment before speaking again. Metallicana, the steel dragon Metallicana. 7 years ago he disappeared without leaving me a single word. Igneel and Grandine also disappeared on July 7, 7 years ago. Gajeel's expression suddenly changed when he heard this. 7 years ago, on July 7, 3 dragons disappeared at the same time. This was by no means a coincidence. Uncle Ian seems to know where Igneel and Grandine went, but he refused to tell Wendy and me. Song said that we will meet again sooner or later. Natsu said distressedly. What did you say? Gajeel seemed to have suddenly forgotten the pain in his body. He rushed to Natsu and grabbed his scarf and asked loudly, does that old man know the whereabouts of Metallicana? You also know Uncle Ian? Natsu looked at Gajeel in surprise. But at this moment, Gajeel's mind was completely filled with excitement. He just wanted to rush to Ian and ask him about this matter. How could he hear what Natsu said? Since the war is over, you should just get out of here. Gajeel said coldly. What a cold guy. Natsu complained. Then he walked out with his hands behind his head. If I hear any news about Metallicana, I will inform you immediately. Gajeel was slightly stunned, obviously not expecting Natsu to say such a thing. His mind once again echoed the words Ian had said to him before. When he came to his senses, Natsu had disappeared from his sight. I won't thank you for that, Gajeel muttered quietly. The war between Phantom Lord and Fairy Tail ended in this way, which was beyond everyone's expectation. Makarov, the president of Fairy Tail and one of the 10 holy mages, didn't even have to fight, and only relied on a few S-class mages in the guild to defeat the Phantom. Arusha even defeated Jose Porla, one of the 10 holy mages, by herself. Later, when the news that Laxus and Mistoggan teamed up to defeat Oration Cease, one of the Balam Alliance, spread from the council, Fairy Tail's reputation reached its peak. After this battle, Fairy Tail also completely established its position as the strongest wizard guild in Fiori. Thunder God Laxus, Witch Arusha, Fairy Queen Urza, Mistoggan became the objects of admiration of countless young wizards, and Fairy Tail also became the dream club of many wizards. At one time, applications for membership came in one after another, and Myra and Lysina were so busy every day. With the 2 memory crystals provided by Ian, and considering that the phantom had been completely defeated, the council only routinely interrogated Makarov and verbally criticized Fairy Tail before passing the matter over. However, the impact of the war between Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord is obviously not limited to this. The collapse of one corner of the Balam Alliance plunged the entire Dark World into turmoil. Unlike the previous joint attack on the Blood Forest by the 4 major guilds, this time only the 10 guilds of Fairy Tail defeated awakens. Driven by fear, many dark guilds advocated taking action against Fairy Tail, but when the news reached the other 2 major guilds of Balam Alliance, Tartaros and Grimoire Heart, they did not receive any response. Just as Ian said, neither Mard, the actual president of Tartaros, nor Hades, the president of Grimoire Heart, wanted to provoke Fairy Tail. The reaction of the other 2 guilds of Balam Alliance also shook the Dark World again. Various conspiracy theories, curse theories, and fatalism were rampant for a while, and the Dark World was also in a panic. Many people chose to quit the Dark World because of this, and the workload of the council was greatly reduced. In addition, even the nobles and business circles of the Kingdom of Fiori were affected by this war. The head of the Heartfilia family, Judd Heartfilia, got the news from somewhere that Phantom Lord had gained the support of the Chu Rainier family in exchange for Lucy Heartfilia. Although they did not succeed in catching Lucy, Judd was furious. If it were not for Layla's dissuasion, Judd would have hired the Wizard Guild to retaliate against the Chu Rainier family. However, Judd did not intend to let the other party go so easily. After finding out the business focus of the Chu Rainier family, Judd immediately took action. Heartfilia Railway Company marched into the Southern Territory with a strong attitude and officially began to fight against the Chu Rainier family. Of course, Lucy was also scolded by Judd because of this matter. Layla was already a very famous celestial spirit wizard when she was your age. As our daughter, how can you be so lazy? While the entire magic world and the Kingdom of Fiori were still arguing over the war between Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord, Fairy Tail was also quietly changing. At Ian's invitation and Makarov's persuasion, Gajil and Juvia finally joined Fairy Tail. Kyubirios, the snake of Cobra of awakens, also got rid of the curse with the help of Ian. She turned back into a human being and changed her name to Kainana and Fairy Tail. At the same time, the brown-haired girl and the little yellow duck who were brought back to the guild by Ian and Myra finally woke up under Lysana's careful care. Chapter 65. Magnolia, Fairy Tail's treatment room. Ekalia slowly opened her eyes. Her memory was still stuck in the time before she fell into coma. She sat up suddenly and confirmed that the half of the blue stone hanging on her chest was still behind her. She looked around vigilantly, but did not see the expected enemy. Instead, she saw Meng Meng, who was still in a coma, on the bed next to her, the little yellow duck. It was only at this time that she finally took the time to check her surroundings. This is a not too big round room with plain and neat blue-grey brick walls. There are 6 beds in the room, all covered with plain white sheets and quilts. At the other end of the room was an open window, through which the cold moonlight shone into the room, as if coating the entire room with a layer of silver-white halo. 070. You finally woke up. At this moment, the door of the room suddenly opened, and a girl with short white hair walked in. She looked at the awakened Ekalia and a warm and bright smile appeared on her face. Where is this? Did you attack me? Ekalia said in a cold tone, not letting her guard down at all because of the girl's gentle attitude. It was Brother Ian and Sister Myra who brought you back. As for the people who attacked you, they must have chased them away. Lysana supported her chin with her index finger and guessed thoughtfully. She was not completely sure. After all, Brother Ian and Sister Myra did things recklessly sometimes. It was possible that they would knock the target unconscious in order to protect him. However, Lysana believes that no matter what the reason is, their starting point must be good. Ekalia could not tell the truth of Lysana's words, nor could she tell the true purpose of Brother Ian and Sister Myra. Years of vigilance drove her to drag her stiff body off the bed, pick up Yang Yang and walk out. I'm leaving now. But your body? Lysana looked worried upon seeing this, but before she could finish her concerned words, the lazy voice coming from the door made Ekalia stop. We haven't seen each other for so many years, and you're leaving without even saying hello to me. Ian leaned against the door, looking at the brown-haired girl standing by the bed with a teasing smile. After all, I was the one who saved you from Grays. It's a bit cruel to leave without even saying thank you, Ekalia. Akela stared at Ian blankly, and suddenly a series of warm pictures flashed through her mind. Her eyes were misty and her body was shaking uncontrollably. Brother Ian. Eat slowly, there's plenty of food and no one will snatch it from you. In the fairy tale guild hall, Ian sat opposite Ekalia with his chin propped up, and said softly while watching the girl and the little yellow duck feasting heartily. Ekalia hasn't been so relaxed in a long time. After swallowing the food in her mouth, Meng Meng looked at Ian with gratitude. A gentle look flashed in Ian's eyes, and he looked at the girl with a smile who was carrying a heavy mission on her thin body. The moment she drank the blood of the phoenix, Ekria gained the eternal life that ordinary people dream of, but it also brought with it more than 400 years of loneliness. During this long period of time, she made friends one after another and watched them reach the end of their lives. In the end, the only one left by her side was Meng Meng, the life she created with her own hands. As a result, Ekalia gradually closed her heart. At the bar, Lucy's eyes flashed with curiosity and gossip as she watched Ian and Ekria getting along so well. She looked at Myra, who had brought Ekria and Meng Meng back with Ian, and wanted to find out something from her. I don't know either. Myra seemed to have seen through Lucy's thoughts. Before she could ask, she smiled and said, time was tight at the time, and Ian only had time to tell me Ekalia's name. I heard that you met Ian's nephew again this time? What's his name? The one in that room? Gray asked curiously. It's Ignatius Woods Grays. Urusha corrected unhappily, a hint of solemnity and fear flashing in her eyes. President, do you know anything? Seeing Makarov's thoughtful expression, Urza asked quickly. Makarov took a long puff of his pipe, and when he saw that Ian did not say anything to stop him, he told everyone present what he knew. Ignatius Grays, the only descendant of Angsur Ramel, the god of life and death. It is said that he was the mastermind behind the demise of the once prosperous Dragunov kingdom on the Ishgar continent more than 400 years ago. Hearing about the kingdom of Dragunov, Urza's heart suddenly began to beat violently. However, everyone's eyes were focused on Makarov at this time, and no one noticed her abnormality. What about Akli and Meng Meng? Lucy asked. For some reason, she seemed to be very concerned about Akli. However, to her disappointment, Makarov shook his head. I have never seen anything about Ekria in the guild's records. That's because history has been artificially tampered with. Just then, Ian came over with Ekalia and Meng Meng, who had already filled their stomachs. Everyone was surprised and angry when they heard this, but Ekalia remained calm. She had seen too many similar things in her long life of more than 400 years. Who are they? How dare they do such a thing that tarnishes history? Lucy cried out in dissatisfaction. The Principality of Veronica. Ian said lightly. I know 0.2, it's a small country located in the north of Fiori. Happy raised his hand and answered. A light immediately flashed in Makarov's eyes. Could it be that Ekalia comes from that lost village? The lost village? Question marks appeared on everyone's faces, but Makarov quickly gave an explanation. More than 400 years ago, before the establishment of the Veronica Principality, there was a village called Fire Village on the land where they are now. But with the destruction of the once prosperous Dragunov kingdom, the village disappeared overnight. Some say they fled to a more distant place to avoid the war. Others say a giant dragon destroyed the village. But the only thing that can be confirmed is that after the Fire Village disappeared, the Veronica family established a country there. Chapter 66. Ekalia and Meng Meng finally accepted the invitation to join Fairy Tale. After wandering for more than 400 years, she finally stopped in Magnolia. Lucy was probably the happiest person about this matter. Although she herself didn't know why, she just felt that she and Ekalia got along very well. I don't know if it was the good luck brought by Ekalia. Since she joined the guild, Lucy, who had been unlucky recently, suddenly started to have good luck. At work, she and Wendy received several commissions with high remuneration and low difficulty. In life, perhaps because he felt that he had criticized Lucy too harshly before, Judd increased her living expenses. This also made Lucy fall into the troubles of the rich again. If I were Judd, I would cut off your living expenses. Ian sat at the bar and said to the annoyed Lucy with a smile, since you have decided to work on your own, you must learn to be self-reliant. I work very hard at 23, too. Lucy argued loudly, but girls have to spend money on many things. Rent, cosmetics, beautiful clothes, and even fines from the Council of Representatives. When talking about the last item, Lucy also showed a sad expression. That's not necessarily true. Ian turned his gaze to Urza, who was wiping her weapon at the side. My armor is also very expensive. Urza said seriously, not understanding what Ian meant. Lucy immediately showed an embarrassed expression. Should I say it's Urza as expected? By the way, brother Ian, have you seen Loki recently? Just then, Ying Shauna came over and asked them. Loki. Lucy looked at Lysina in confusion. What happened to him? Lysina sighed. His girlfriends have been looking for him recently, and they even came to the guild. But I haven't seen him recently, and his name is not on the commission record. This guy is truly a complete scumbag. Lucy complained with a black face. Maybe he just found his true love, so he decided to cut off everything from the past. Ian said jokingly. Lysina and Lucy rolled their eyes when they heard this. If I see him, I'll tell him. Lucy waved her hand, but I don't think there's a chance. He's never been good at dealing with celestial spirit wizards. Thank you, Lucy. Then Lysina went back to the bar to help Akalia and Kainana. As newcomers, the two were already in a state of panic and looked at a loss. After Lucy and Wendy accepted the commission and left the guild, Ian also returned home. How about it, have you decided? Ian went straight to the desk and sat down. On his desk were 4 keys, 3 gold and 1 silver. The golden light lit up, and Aries, Scorpion, and Gemini appeared in the room. I have communicated with Aquarius, and I am willing to sign a contract with Lucy. Scorpion, who was dressed like a trendy man, spoke first. Sumimasa, I am willing to sign a contract with Miss Lucy, but I want to find Leo who has been away from the celestial spirit world for 3 years first, Sumimasa. Aries mustered up the courage to say, and then she immediately lowered her head, as if she was ready to be punished by Ian. You're making me look like a pervert. Ian's mouth twitched slightly, and he couldn't help but complain. But Aries apologized again after hearing it. Ian rolled his eyes, but he knew that Aries was just like that. Finally, he turned his gaze to Gemini, who had remained silent. We want to observe for a while longer, bang bang. Gemini held hands and flew around Ian, seemingly not afraid of him at all. Ian understood that they were worried that Lucy would be like Angel, a celestial spirit holder who didn't care about the idea. But he was not in a hurry, because there would be an opportunity to solve Aries' problem and let Gemini see what kind of celestial spirit wizard Lucy was. Loki, or more precisely, the celestial spirit Leo of Leo, has been stranded in the human world for 3 years, thinking that he has betrayed his owner. Now he is almost unable to hold on. A week passes in a flash. Lucy never thought that her conversation with Lysina would become a boomerang and hit her. During this week, Loki, who used to avoid her, would appear beside her from time to time and say some strange things to her. He even said that he didn't have long to live, which made his companion Lucy confused and very worried. In order to find out the secret of Loki, Lucy summoned Crux from the Southern Cross. He is an expert in celestial spirit studies and has all the relevant information connecting the celestial spirit world and the door to the human world, and even knows which celestial spirit wizard has summoned which celestial spirits in the past. Karen Lilica. This is the answer given by Crux. She was a wizard of Blue Pegasus and had participated in the previous joint crusade against the Blood Forest. Unfortunately, she died while working a few years ago. Combining the information provided by Crux with the strange words Loki said to her before, Lucy had a vague guess in her mind. Finally, she found Loki, who had been missing for a long time, in front of a tombstone next to a waterfall. Loki, this is Karen's grave, right? Lucy looked at Loki with a sad face. As a celestial spirit mage, she could clearly feel how weak Loki was at the moment, almost on the verge of disappearing. Celestial spirit mage Karen Lilica was your previous owner, Loki. No, I should call you Leo. Have you figured it out? Loki laughed bitterly. I had already decided long ago, but I couldn't help myself in the end. I am really a useless celestial spirit. What happened between you and Karen? Why do you stay in the human world? Lucy asked anxiously. She knew that if Loki could not return to the celestial spirit world as soon as possible, the only thing waiting for him was death. Whether as a guild companion or as a wizard who deeply loves celestial spirit, Lucy cannot sit idly by and watch this happen. I can't go back now. Loki said calmly, feeling both guilty and relieved. Because I violated the prohibition between the holder and the celestial spirit, I was permanently exiled from the celestial spirit world. I killed Karen myself. Chapter 67. Lucy's pupils suddenly contracted and an expression of disbelief appeared on her face. Then Rocky told her the story between him and Karen Lilica. 3 years ago, relying on her outstanding appearance, temperament, and not too weak strength, Karen became a famous celestial spirit wizard in the kingdom of Fiori. But contrary to her glamorous appearance, Karen Lilica is actually a celestial spirit wizard who treats celestial spirits as tools and has no regard for celestial spirits' feelings at all and has an extremely bad personality. Aries was often abused by Karen for various reasons. Leo couldn't stand this situation anymore and wanted to terminate the contract with Karen. When he was rejected, he relied on his own strength to stay in the human world, making it impossible for Karen, who couldn't even open the door twice, to work normally. 3 months later, Leo, who had gradually adapted to the human world, received bad news from Bob, the president of Blue Pegasus. Karen took a commission without permission and eventually died at work. From that day on, I can no longer return to the celestial spirit world. This is the law and rule of the celestial spirit world. Loki suddenly collapsed to the ground weakly, and his body began to gradually become illusory. But it's not your fault. Celestial spirits also have lives, emotions, and thoughts. They are not anyone's tools. Lucy tried to grab Loki, but her arm passed through his body. If sacrificing for your companions is also wrong, then what is the meaning of magic? I will never watch my companions disappear in front of me. Open, Leo's door. Lucy released all her magic power at once, and she tried to force the door open without a key. A golden beam of light mixed with lightning shot up into the sky, illuminating the entire night sky. Loki tried to stop her, but he was so weak that he couldn't even move a finger. He could only watch Lucy suffer this great pain because of her sin. Let go, Lucy. You have already begun to assimilate with the celestial spirit. If you continue like this, you will die. Please don't add to my sins. What a sin! If this is the rule of the celestial spirit world, then I will change it. Perhaps it was Lucy's sincerity that touched the celestial spirit king, or perhaps it was her arrogant declaration that angered the celestial spirit king. Just as Lucy finished speaking, the air suddenly froze. The waterfall in front of them began to flow back as if attracted by an unknown force. In the starry sky, an extremely huge figure appeared in front of Lucy and Loki. Celestial Spirit King. Why are you here? Celestial Spirit King? Does that mean he is the greatest celestial spirit? The sudden change turned Lucy into that cute little girl again. Looking at the huge figure in front of her, she seemed very nervous. My old friend, according to the covenant between celestial spirit and humans, celestial spirit is strictly forbidden to kill the person holding the key. Although it was not your direct action, Leo who indirectly took such action, you have been banned from returning to the celestial spirit world, said the celestial spirit king looking at Luke. But this rule is too much. Lucy mustered up the courage to retort. My dear little girl of old humanity, this is the only rule that cannot be changed. I absolutely cannot accept this. Lucy cried out in sorrow. A dazzling golden light shone from her body, and the celestial spirits she held appeared behind her one after another. Even if Loki disappears, Karen will never come back. This is just another tragedy. It is definitely not a sin to want to protect your companions. As Lucy finished speaking, not only the celestial spirit she held, but also Scorpion, Aries, and even Jamie Temple appeared behind her. Aries. Scorpion. Gemini. Loki looked at his former companions with a look of astonishment. Pitch, tick. At this moment, Gemini finally put aside all his worries and took the initiative to sign a contract with Lucy. I understand. Since my friend has said this, then perhaps it is the law that is at fault. Celestial Spirit King was silent for a long time before speaking again. As soon as he spoke, Loki showed a look of astonishment on his face. Leo, who made a mistake for his companions. My friend, who risked his life to save Leo. Considering your steadfast friendship, this matter will be handled as an exception. Leo, I specially allow you to return to the celestial spirit world. If you still want to atone for your sins, then become a helper to your friend and do your best to survive. She should be a friend worth fighting for. As the stars shone again, the celestial spirit king gradually turned into bubbles and disappeared. The frozen time began to flow again. In the rainbow created by the waterfall falling again, Loki seemed to see Karen smiling at him. In the forest, Ian looked at the 3 keys in his hand that turned into golden light and disappeared. He smiled faintly and turned away. Where he couldn't see, Lucy looked at the 4 extra keys in her hand, her face filled with joy and excitement. Thank you, Fern. What did you say? Loki is a celestial spirit. The next day, when Loki appeared in the guild again and revealed his identity to everyone, Natsu looked around him in surprise. There's one more thing that might surprise you even more. Loki looked at Ian at the bar. Seeing that Ian didn't object, he spoke again, okay. It was only after I returned to the Celestial Spirit Realm that I found out that it was Ian who signed the covenant with the Celestial Spirit King on behalf of humanity. Oh my! Loki's words shocked everyone and Lucy looked at Ian with resentful eyes. It's useless for you to look at me. Ian said lazily, this covenant was signed on behalf of mankind, so even I can't change it easily. But I don't have to work so hard. Lucy muttered. Ian immediately stretched out his right hand towards him, then give me back the key to Gemini. Lucy immediately moved away from Ian upon hearing this, and hugged the key hanging around her waist like a miser. Her reaction naturally caused everyone to laugh. Finally, after saying goodbye to everyone, Loki returned to the Celestial Spirit World. Chapter 68. Akane Resort is the most popular seaside tourist destination in the Kingdom of Fiori. It is also the place where Ian and Urza met for the first time. I haven't been here for many years. This time, it's all thanks to Loki. Urusha was standing on the beach wearing sunglasses and a swimsuit. Her graceful figure naturally attracted a lot of attention. Not only her, but also Lucy and Urza, who rarely took off her armor, had curvy figures that attracted many people to whistle. Some people even accidentally fell into the sea because they were too focused on watching them. Next to them, Wendy couldn't help but look at their unbelievable figures with envy. It's okay, Wendy, it just hasn't started to develop yet. Carla whispered to comfort her. Has Urusha been here before? At this moment, Mirti asked curiously. She and Wendy are of similar age, and both are wearing one-piece swimsuits, but in terms of figure, Mirti, who has begun to develop, has a clear advantage over Wendy. Looking at his own smooth and peaceful and extremely vicious appearance, Wen couldn't help but start to fall. Even Carla didn't know how to comfort Wendy in this situation. After all, it was really a bit discouraging. It's okay, Wendy, small ones are cute too. Gray showed his high EQ for once today, but what he said made Wendy cry even louder. Gray, you made her cry. Natsu suddenly came over and said with a gloating look. Stop talking nonsense. Look at me. Gray, who was already afraid of being targeted by Yuryuti, suddenly had veins on his forehead when he heard Natsu's words. You wanna fight? Droopy eyes. I'm not afraid of you, you fire-breathing idiot. Come on, I'm going to beat you up and make you cry today, you pervert who loves to take off your clothes. Very abruptly, without any warning, Gray and Natsu suddenly started fighting. For a moment, ice and fire flew together, adding a different style to the beautiful Akagawa Resort beach. Half an hour later, Natsu and Gray, with bruised faces and noses, sat obediently on the beach. They looked at the people having fun not far away, and both showed envious expressions. It's all your fault, Gray. If it weren't for you, I could have gone playing in the water with Happy. Natsu complained to Gray. How dare you say that? Gray angrily retorted, it was you who started it first. You were the one who called me a droopy-eyed person first. You also told me to droop my eyes. With a bang, their foreheads hit each other again. You wanna fight? Come and try if you have the ability. The two who had just been severely punished by Urza and Ursha forgot about the beating they had just received in the blink of an eye and started fighting again. What awaited them were naturally two fresh slaps. The two men immediately rolled on the ground, covering their heads. If you keep making trouble, I will sink you into the sea. Urza's voice was as cold as if it came from the nine nether hell. Gray and Natsu immediately hugged each other and transformed into the second level of Happy. Really? Such a great vacation trip was ruined by you two, you unpleasant guys. Feeling the constant curiosity and scrutiny from all around, Lucy was about to dig her way out of the three-bedroom apartment with her toes. Don't worry about these details, Lucy. Ian was lying on the recliner leisurely, covering his face with a towel. As long as you are not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed. As a wizard of fairy tale, how can you care so much about other people's eyes? So this is why everyone always goes overboard when they're working. Lucy rolled her eyes and complained loudly. I see. Natsu and Gray, the two talented young men, seemed to suddenly understand why they were always punished by the council. It turns out that all this is Ian's fault. Bang! Bang! Two more slaps, Natsu and Gray were in so much pain that they almost cried. what a pair of hopeless idiots. Carla spread her hands and stabbed Natsu and Grey in the chest again with a very venomous tongue. By the way, this is where we first met. Time flies. Arusha said with emotion. She looked at Urza and said with a hint of meaning, I was really shocked when you called Ian teacher. The slightly damp sea breeze blew Urza's crimson hair, and her thoughts gradually drifted back to 8 years ago. Simon, Hugh, Wally, Miliana. How are you guys? As if she had noticed Urza's change of mood, Arusha walked over to her side and stood shoulder to shoulder with her. I also have a score to settle with that Jalal guy, she whispered. Urza's heart suddenly warmed up and a smile appeared on her face. Thank you, Tia. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion on the beach not far away. The crowd dispersed to both sides, as if some important person had arrived. Soon, the frogman came to Ian with a group of soldiers. Ian Bell, the elders of the council have something to ask you. Please come with us. The arrogant frogman seemed unaware of what kind of existence he was facing. However, the only response he got was deathly silence. Not only was Ian lying on the recliner without moving, but even Natsu and Grey were looking at him with pity in their eyes. Shut up, or I'll kill you. Ian's voice came from under the towel. The cold murderous intent made the frogman, who was still so high and mighty in the last second, fall into the abyss in the next second. I ask, you answer. Ian said lightly, his aura as heavy as a mountain made the frogman feel a little difficult to breathe. Is the person looking for Mizika Ian? Hearing this name, Urza's pupils suddenly contracted, a hint of fear and murderous intent flashed in his eyes, and his magic power inevitably fluctuated slightly. No, this is the order passed down to me by the second counselor, Dushan. The frogman answered in a trembling voice. Ian showed a slightly surprised expression. He didn't expect that this wasn't the work of Jalal. Wasn't he afraid that he would ruin his plan? However, the frogman's next words soon answered his doubts. But before I set off, Lord Zikrane told me to tell you a message if you refuse the summons. The frogman told Ian everything he knew like pouring beans. Lord Zikrane asked me to tell you about the fire village and the phoenix. As soon as it finished speaking, an amazing magical force pressed it firmly into the beach. Before it fainted, Ian's heartfelt warning rang in its ears. Next time when you accept a mission, remember to keep your eyes open. Chapter 69. Magic Council Era. Makarov rarely appeared in the interrogation room. Facing the unreasonable difficulties of the members of the council headed by Speaker Crawford, Makarov argued with reason and refused to give in. It turned out that this morning, Makarov also received a summons from Speaker Crawford. He originally thought that someone in the guild had caused trouble again, and Speaker Crawford called him in to be scolded. But when he arrived at the council, he found out that the council had come because of Ekalia's matter. The council somehow learned about Ekalia's origin and the secrets hidden in her body. They called Makarov to come and hoped that he could hand Ekalia over to the council. Makarov, you should know very well how dangerous the Phoenix is. Once this uncontrolled power is obtained by someone with ulterior motives, it will cause extremely dire consequences. The commander of the Forced Detention Force, alternate Councillor Gulandoma, slammed the scepter in his hand heavily on the ground and roared at Makarov in anger. Gulandoma is a representative of the hardliners in the council, and has always advocated a zero-tolerance attitude towards problematic guilds like Fairy Tail. Gulandoma is right, Makarov, we don't intend to hurt Ekalia, but beings like her must be supervised. Compared to Gulandoma's toughness, Og's attitude is more moderate, but his point of view is consistent with Gulandoma. Ekalia is a member of Fairy Tail. As a parent, I will never hand over the guild's child for these unfounded reasons. Makarov was also extremely angry. As far as I know, Ekria has lived for more than 400 years. Makarov, if I remember correctly, you are only in your 80s. Senator Reggie pushed up his sunglasses and told a rare joke, but it didn't make anyone laugh. In any case, I will never hand over anyone in the guild for such a boring reason. Makarov said with an extremely firm attitude. Seeing this, Gulandoma did not intend to continue arguing with him, but looked at Speaker Crawford with a dagger in his eye. Mr. Speaker, I apply to lead the detention team to forcibly arrest Ekalia. This dangerous force must not be allowed to wander around, and must be controlled by the council. Let's see who dares. Makarov was furious when he heard that. The magic power of the Saint Level 10 burst out, and the entire Translation Institute began to tremble violently. Makarov, are you planning to rebel? Gudoma shouted in shock and excitement. The noise in the conference room naturally alarmed the council's resident magician corps. Upon hearing Gulandoma's shout, they immediately rushed in and surrounded Makarov. Makarov, if you continue to persist, I will have to arrest you on the spot. With the support of the army, Gulandoma became more confident. When things got to this point, both Speaker Crawford and other members looked unhappy. It was because of Makarov's ignorance and Gulandoma's overstepping. Crawford had clearly reminded him many times before that he must use a conciliatory policy to make Makarov voluntarily agree to hand over Ekalaya, but Gulandoma took things to the point of mobilizing the army. Just when the situation was at a stalemate, a slightly frivolous, lazy but slightly cold voice suddenly sounded, and Crawford's face suddenly changed after hearing this voice. Not only him, but also the faces of other councillors except Og and Zikrane also changed drastically. Bang! With a loud bang, the ceiling of the conference room suddenly exploded, and countless pieces of rubble fell down. Many members of the Crescent Knights were caught off guard and were hit by the falling stones. For a while, screams were heard everywhere and the scene was extremely chaotic. Ian slowly descended from the blown-up ceiling and looked at Gulandoma expressionlessly, not hiding the murderous intent in his eyes at all. Gulandoma, am I unable to lift it, or are you too arrogant? How dare you order your troops to besiege the leader of a regular guild without any legitimate reason? Sir Ian Bell, don't be impulsive. Crawford spoke quickly, fearing that Gulandoma would be beheaded in the next second. Crawford, I need an explanation. Ian tilted his head and turned his gaze to Crawford. His contemptuous attitude made Gulandoma's anger reach a peak. Crawford opened his mouth, but didn't know how to explain. He cursed the person who leaked the secret in his heart, but he didn't know that the culprit was standing next to him. Of course, Og did not leak the information intentionally. He did it out of public interest, without any personal feelings. So when Crawford didn't know how to face Ian's anger, he took the initiative to stand up. Request flowers 00 Sir Ian Bell, we already know about Ekalia and the Phoenix. The Council unanimously believes that this kind of uncontrolled power should not be left to wander freely. It must be supervised and controlled. If you want supervision, shouldn't you go to the Principality of Veronica? Ian glanced at Ouge and said lightly. Don't be ridiculous. Do you want us to start a war with a principality? Gulandoma said contemptuously. But the next second he flew out, hit the wall hard, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Did I ask you to speak? Ian said coldly. Originally, he had no ill feelings towards Gulandoma. Everything he did was to maintain the dignity of the council and the order of the magic world. It was just that this time he happened to offend him. Ian's reckless behavior immediately caused the entire conference room to fall into silence. However, the speaker and the members did not say anything, and the Knights of the Fang did not know whether they should take action to stop Ian's violence. But it was a good thing that they did not take action, otherwise they would have to accompany their unfortunate companions who were injured by the falling rocks. Crawford, listen carefully, I'm not negotiating with you. If I know that the council is targeting anyone in Fairy Tale without any legitimate reason, I don't mind reorganizing the council. Ian said to Crawford indifferently. There was no threat in his tone, but no one dared to ignore his words. After saying this, Ian took Makarov and left the council. Without the order of the speaker or any member of the council, the Crescent Knights did not dare to stop them. Crawford and the other members of the parliament breathed a sigh of relief only after Ian and Makarov's backs completely disappeared. But before they could check on Gulandoma's injuries, a flurry of hurried footsteps made their hearts flutter again. Mr. Speaker, something bad has happened. The intelligence department just received news that an hour ago, the entire royal family and army of the Principality of Veronica were hit by a destructive force and were completely wiped out. In an instant, the messy meeting room fell into silence again. Even Gulandoma's scepter falling to the ground failed to wake anyone up. Chapter 70. The time goes back to when Ian just received the summons from the council. Ian refused Urusha and Urza's request to follow him and left Akane Resort, but he did not rush to the council immediately, but headed towards the northern part of Fiori. Compared to the vast Fiori kingdom, which covers almost half of the Ishgar continent, the Veronica Principality, which is surrounded by mountains and has only one city, is more like a city-state than a country. Flying at full speed, Ian took 2 hours to reach the border of the Principality of Veronica, and then only 5 minutes to reach the palace. Who are you? Someone, come here. Seeing Ian suddenly falling from the sky, the ruler of the Principality of Veronica, Prince 460 Krim, was suddenly shocked and called for the guards, but no one responded. Don't shout. They are indulging in a sweet dream. No one will come to save you even if you shout your throat out. Ian was stunned for a moment after he finished speaking. Looking at Prince Krim's sharp-nosed monkey-faced face, which was painted as white as the hospital ward, he couldn't help but turn around and retch. Ugh! When Prince Krim saw his reaction, his fear was instantly dispelled by anger. The thing he was most proud of in his life was his unparalleled beautiful face. In addition to using the power of the phoenix to make the country stronger, another important reason for him to collect the phoenix stone was to gain eternal life and keep his face young forever. But Ian's actions undoubtedly trampled on his pride repeatedly. How could he not do otherwise? Someone come! Someone come! Kill this madman for me! Prince Krim screamed, and his efforts were not in vain. Although his guards were hypnotized by Ian, the guards patrolling the palace still heard his hysterical shouting and quickly rushed to his palace. Junyan! The violent explosion engulfed the gate, and the soldiers running in the front were blown away by the impact of the explosion. The soldiers behind hurriedly stopped when they saw this. Roll! A majestic and loud voice like thunder rang out, and the soldiers outside the door felt their brains go blank. They subconsciously dropped their weapons and slowly retreated. Such a scene immediately made Prince Krim's eyes clearer, and he finally understood what kind of existence he was facing. Don't kill me, I can pay any price, money, beauty, power, as long as I have it, as long as you want it. Prince Krim begged Ian with tears and snot. I want the half of the phoenix stone in your hand. Ian said lightly. Krim's pleading suddenly stopped, and his expression became extremely ugly. Is it difficult? Ian had a joking smile on his face, but his voice was so cold that it made Prince Krim's heart shiver. Even if it's difficult, we don't have to do it. It's not difficult, it's not difficult. Under the threat of death, King Krim chose to surrender with all his heart. Walking out of the room, through the soft carpeted corridor, past a hidden door, and down the winding dim stairs, Prince Krim brought Ian to a secret room. The secret room was empty, with only a not too big table standing alone in the middle of the room, and on the table was a stone box engraved with a phoenix pattern. I command you to stumble forward, with the blood and bones of the dead. Open it, Phoenix. As Prince Krim chanted Joyu, the stone box slowly opened, revealing half a stone emitting a red glow inside. A dark light flashed in Prince Krim's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he picked up the half of the phoenix stone that the Veronica family had obtained for hundreds of years, and handed it to Ian reluctantly. But just as Ian was about to take it, Prince Krim's expression suddenly changed, and his right hand holding the phoenix stone suddenly burst out with terrifying magic power. He threw a ferocious punch, and the violent magic power, accompanied by a sharp sound of breaking through the air, swept towards Ian like a storm. However, something happened that made Prince Krim horrified and desperate. In this storm where ordinary people could not stand, Ian not only remained unmoved and steady as a rock, but he could even tear through the storm with ease and walked out calmly. Interesting. Ian had an unpredictable smile on his face. Upon seeing this, Prince Krim stepped back again and again, his right hand, which was tightly holding half of the phoenix stone, emitting a dazzling light. Is it instinctively resisting me? Ian murmured thoughtfully, Adrian Ross. The room was silent, with only the scarlet light flickering on the phoenix stone, as if responding to Ian. In such a quiet environment, the fear in Prince Krim's heart continued to grow. Driven by fear, he punched the ground again. Cracks immediately appeared on the ground, extending and climbing along the bricks, spreading to the walls and stone pillars supporting the room. With a loud roar, the 1.7-meter ceiling collapsed, and the falling rocks forcibly separated the two. Ian quietly watched Prince Krim disappear in the dust, but did not choose to chase him. The commotion in the palace naturally attracted the attention of the army. 10 teams of soldiers swarmed towards the king and surrounded the ruined palace of Master Krim. A gust of wind blew past, dispersing the thick smoke and dust. At the same time, a powerful pressure suddenly erupted with Prince Krim's palace as the center, and swept across the entire palace at an extremely fast speed. All the soldiers were crushed to the ground by this irresistible force, and could only watch the lunatic who trampled on Veronica's royal power walk away. Chapter 71. You won't really destroy the Principality of Veronica, will you? Outside the Magic Council, Makarov showed a look of horror when he learned that Ian had been to the Principality of Veronica. Are you kidding me? Do I look like such a cruel person? Ian rolled his eyes, and Makarov's heart was relieved. But Ian's next sentence made him stop breathing. I just beat up the powerful Prince Krim and demolished the palace. Teacher Ian, is it too late for me to appoint you as the 4th-generation president of Fairy Tale? Makarov said with a sad face. He had even seen the protests and compensation lists flying towards him like snowflakes. Then my first order upon taking office as president will be to appoint you as the 5th president. The sun was warm on his body, but Makarov's heart was cold. For some reason, there were always tears in his eyes. Just as the two were about to leave the council territory, a wizard from the Crescent 23 Knights rode a magical beast and caught up with them. Mr. Makarov, please stay. Speaker Crawford wants to discuss something with you. As if frightened by Ian's unfriendly look, he quickly explained, it has nothing to do with your guild member Ekalia. After thinking for a moment, Makarov decided to go back and see what was going on. After all, if Fairy Tale didn't want to become a dark official, he would inevitably have to deal with the council. Although what Ian did today was excessive, he was just venting his anger. Given his status and strength, the Council of Review, which was already in the wrong, would never dare to make a fuss about this matter. Shortly after Makarov followed the Wizard of the Crescent Knights and left, Ian keenly sensed the subtle fluctuations of magic power not far away. If you don't come out, I'll blow up your Tower of Heaven. Ian said lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, a man walked out from behind the big tree next to the sun. It was Zikrane, who had competed with Ian for the most desired boyfriend wizard position. Senior Ian, I don't quite understand what you mean. Zikrane had a calm smile on his face, but soon he could no longer maintain his composure. The body of thought is such a good magic. Ian said lightly. Ian's smile froze immediately, and then quickly turned gloomy. He moved his hands slightly in his pockets, as if he wanted to attack, but he held back in the end. Urza told you everything. Zikrane, Jalal said coldly. Now that his identity has been revealed, he doesn't plan to keep it secret any longer. You underestimate my source of information and overestimate yourself. Ian stood with his hands behind his back, looking unfathomable. You don't seem to be planning to stop me. Jalal's eyes flashed. Although he was looked down upon, he was not angry, but relieved. What if I'm still planning to lend you a hand? Ian said teasingly. Jalal's eyes narrowed. He had no idea what Ian's real purpose was. But if he missed such a great opportunity, conditions. Jalal didn't believe there was a free lunch in this world, and even if there was, it definitely wouldn't fall from Ian Bell's hands. I just like chatting with smart people. Ian smiled and hooked Jalal's shoulder. He tried to dodge, but found that he couldn't move at all. Then Ian took out half a piece of stone slab emitting blue light like a magic trick. I'll give you this as a reward for tipping me off. Phoenix Stone. Jalal showed a surprised expression, and looked at the half piece of Phoenix Stone with a deep look. What is your purpose in doing this? Let's be frank. This thing is too dangerous. If it stays with Ekalia, it will become a hidden danger sooner or later. Ian said sincerely. Is there anything more dangerous in this world than you, Ian Bell? Jalal rolled his eyes, looking like he was asking, do you think I believe this? But who is Ian? He is an old fox who has lived for more than 1,000 years. Jalal wants to break his defense with his little skill? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Well, mainly because I like Crawford. If he steps down because of this incident, the next person to replace him will definitely be that BD Gulandoma. Ian said, gritting his teeth. You can just expose me, and then Crawford won't have to take any risk. But Jalal didn't buy his tricks at all and remained unmoved. Ian withdrew his hand expressionlessly, and kept shaking his fist as big as a casserole in front of Jalal. Just say whether you're going to do it or not and that's it. Let's do it. Jalal immediately took the half of the Phoenix Stone from Ian's hand. He was not stupid, so why not do something that was obviously beneficial to him and could save him from a beating? But then a hint of doubt appeared on his face. I'm planning to use Urza as a sacrifice. Ian looked at him as if he were a fool, his face full of distrust of his ability. Wait until you beat Urza before you say that. Jalal's mouth twitched a few times. He believed what Ian said. It was definitely what he really thought. But he still didn't give up. He didn't believe that he didn't have a bargaining chip that could make Ian afraid. What about Ziref? You'd better revive him. I've been wanting to give him some big assholes for a long time. Destroy, I'm tired. At this moment, Jalal even had the urge to surrender to the council, but in the end reason prevailed. Jalal was determined to make Ian regret his decision today. He took away the phoenix stone Ian gave him and returned to the council house with endless confusion. Looking at Ziref's leaving back, Ian showed a smile that indicated that everything was under control. Resurrect Ziref? Are you kidding me? If you have the guts, resurrect a living person and show me. Chapter 72. Akanyi Resort. After Ian and the council's envoy left, Arusha and the others were also distracted by the constant glances from the surrounding tourists. Except for the heartless Natsu and Happy who still stayed on the beach playing with sand, Gray chose to go back to sleep. Arusha, the 5 girls and Carla returned to the room and started playing cards. But after an afternoon, the 5 people and the cat began to feel a little bored. I heard that there is an indoor playground on the underground first floor of the hotel. It is only open at night. Should we go there and play for a while? Xi suggested at this time. Wendy and Mirti's eyes lit up when they heard the word amusement park. So there is such a place. Urza, who was drowsy, perked up after hearing this. Tia, are you going? Arusha, who had been winning all afternoon, yawned loudly, then waved her hand lazily. You guys go ahead, I'm a little sleepy. Urza and the others didn't force it, and the 4 of them and the cat left the room happily. The weather isn't very good. Arusha murmured softly as she looked out the window at the cloudy sky. At this time, on the underground first floor of the hotel, a huge space was bustling with people. Tourists who came here for the amusement park brought a lot of popularity to the amusement park, and the noisy and cheerful noise week also made the underground, which should have been cold and damp, bustling with activity. Urza and the others who were here for the first time were all surprised when they saw this scene. After asking Urza, Wendy and Mirti took Carla and ran towards the children's entertainment facilities not far away. Urza, look, Natsu and Gray are here too. Lucy immediately saw the cherry-haired boy who was very excited next to the game console, and the black-haired boy who was about to take off his shirt at the card table but was held back by the waiter. I really can't do anything about them, so I won't teach them a lesson today. Urza said with a helpless smile on his face, like a disciplinary committee member, let's go play too, Lucy. Lucy, who was waiting for this sentence, immediately took Urza to the card table in another room. She had long wanted to experience this. Before, Jude always used words like the eldest daughter of the Hartfilia family should behave like a lady from a noble family to prevent her from touching these things. Compared to the afternoon when he kept losing to Arusha, Urza seemed to have amazing luck when playing with outsiders. The consecutive straight flushes made the dealer doubt his life. The dealer has changed. At this moment, 10 black-skinned and blonde-haired men came over to replace the original dealer. I think I can win no matter who deals the cards now. Urza, who was confident and ready to kill everyone, did not notice the appearance of the newcomers. Until he spoke. In that case, how about playing a special game? Quinn looked at Urza with a burning, aggressive gaze. Let's use our lives as a bet, Sister Urza. Urza, who already felt that the voice sounded familiar, was suddenly startled when she heard this, and the 5 cards in front of her formed a word, death. Urza looked up and her pupils suddenly contracted. You are, Xiu. Long time no see, sister. Zio had a faint smile on her face and her voice was very calm, but her tone was full of grimness. I have been thinking about you all these years. Lucy, who was standing by, was confused by this scene. She looked at Zio in confusion, then at Urza who was shaking all over. Urza, who is he? At this moment, there was a sudden explosion outside, and then the lights in the room suddenly went out. The sudden change scared Lucy so much that she sat down on the ground. It hurts, it hurts. In the darkness, Lucy cried out in pain while holding her butt. She struggled to stand up but accidentally grabbed an arm. Urza, is that you? But the one who responded to her was not Urza, but a strong rope. Niao, it's not Urza, it's Miliana. When the lights came on again, Xi, who was tied up tightly and unable to move, noticed that there was a girl dressed like Catwoman next to him. Moreover, all other tourists in the room had disappeared at this time, replaced by 2 other men. Simon, Wally, Miliana, are you here too? Urza's eyes flashed with excitement, but then turned into sadness. Have you also become Jalal's accomplices? Accomplice? Hearing this, Zio laughed in anger. It's obviously you, my sister, who made us suffer. Urza lowered her head, her long crimson hair covering her cheeks, making it impossible to see her expression at the moment. Urza, just come back with us. Simon said calmly, if you still expect those companions outside to help you, you are wrong. What did you do to Wendy and the others? Lucy's pupils suddenly shrank when she heard that, and a hint of fear flashed across her face. She continued to struggle and shouted loudly. Just let them sleep for a while, meow. Miliana's words made Lucy feel relieved a little, but Wally's words made her heart hang again. It's hard to say about the guy I'm dealing with. Wally's arm suddenly turned into a spear and fired a shot at Lucy's mouth. He was always yelling and didn't cooperate at all, so if I rescued him in time, maybe he could be saved. Natsu. Lucy's expression suddenly became dull, tears, flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. She didn't understand why she just came out to relax and then encountered something like this. Even though Lucy always sets traps for Natsu and makes him take the blame from time to time, the bond between them as companions is absolutely genuine. However, Urza still did not react to these words. She seemed to be trapped in guilt and could not extricate herself. Only her clenched fists showed that she was not at peace at the moment. However, just when Simon and his friends thought that Urza was about to give up resistance, a cold voice made their faces change drastically. I've dealt with the people outside. You can start now, Urza. Arusha walked in with light steps, followed by Wendy and Mirti who were still sleepy, Natsu who was grinning with his mouth wide open, and Grey who looked solemn. Chapter 73. UBD. Natsu shouted at Wally, who looked like a building block, as soon as he entered the room. A normal person would shoot a bullet into someone's mouth. It hurts. You might get seriously injured. No, if it were a normal person, he would have died long ago. Everyone in the room was silent after hearing what Natsu said, and a few black lines slid down their foreheads. The atmosphere that was extremely solemn a second ago was also eased a lot. You, Urza, did you know we were coming? Simon looked solemnly at Arusha and the others who had blocked their only escape route, then looked at Urza who had finally raised her head. I will atone for my sins to you, but I will also stop you from making further mistakes. A hint of sadness flashed across Urza's calm eyes. It was undoubtedly a very difficult decision to attack his former companions. Don't even think about it. As soon as Zio took out a few blank cards, several bright knife lights flashed before his eyes, and the next second, all the cards in his hand were split in two. Then he was knocked unconscious by Urza's knife handle. Split? Seeing this, Wally's arms immediately turned into machine guns, but before he could pull the trigger, Urza holding the 010 long sword flashed past him. Black Feather Moon Flash. In order not to hurt Wally, Urza knocked him unconscious with the blade of the sword. Meow. Miliana wanted to resist, but the next second, Urza hit her on the neck and she fell into a coma. 3 people were killed with 3 moves, and now Simon was the only one who could still fight. But Urza put away his weapon and changed back to his usual outfit. Long time no see, Simon, thank you for still believing in me. You've met some very good companions, Urza. Simon suddenly smiled, and then he and Urza hugged each other. Hey, you guys, Urza, what's going on? Lucy suddenly felt that her brain was not enough. How did Arusha know what happened in the amusement park, and why did the people who were enemies a second ago suddenly become friendly forces? It was he, Ktuk, who asked me to inform Arusha. Grey said unhappily, it was also him who caused the room to suddenly darken just now, in order to cover my escape. He felt underestimated. We did this just to be on the safe side. Simon seemed to see Grey's displeasure, and explained, today's action was not actually ordered by Jalal, but by another woman named Violet. She used charm magic on us while Jalal was away, asking us to capture Urza. Urza and Arusha looked at each other. They didn't expect to meet an old friend here. Although the Blood Forest was defeated, only President Randolph Lambert and Max Hayden were captured. Violet managed to escape the capture of the council with the help of Wiz. But why are you not affected by her magic? Grey asked doubtfully. He still remained skeptical of Simon. As long as one's will is strong enough, one can resist the magic of immunity. Urza said softly. Arusha looked at Simon deeply, wondering how strong this man's trust in Urza was. As an old rival, she knew how difficult Violet was. What I'm more curious about is, since the R system has been completed, why did Jalal suddenly leave at this critical moment? Arusha said lightly. She had always been brooding over the fact that she had let Jalal escape from her hands 8 years ago, and now that she had found the opportunity, she naturally wanted to avenge her previous shame. Simon naturally didn't know the reason, but a certain white-haired man expressed responsibility for the incident. Urza, what happened back then? Why did Jalal say that you betrayed us and blew up all the ships to escape alone? Although Simon has always believed in Urza, he also wants to know what happened back then. It's Jalal. Urza said softly. She then told him about Jalal's sudden change of character, how he was rescued by Arusha and Ian, and how he later joined Fairy Tale. It was not until this time that Lucy and the others truly understood Urza's past. I am sure that Zikrane is Jalal, but he threatened me with your lives, so I have never dared to speak out about this matter all these years. Lucy covered her mouth in surprise. She didn't expect that her most desired boyfriend, the #1 wizard, Zikaline, was such a bad person. How dare that guy do this to Urza? Natsu punched the floor in anger. Whether it's Natsu or Grey, they are always ruthlessly suppressed by Urza. But if an outsider dares to bully Urza, they will be the first to disagree. Fight back, Urza. Grey said with high fighting spirit. Why can you make such a dangerous thing sound so easy? Although Lucy was complaining about Grey, she was actually willing to help Urza. I have to say, Violet really helped a lot. Arusha smiled faintly. If it weren't for the help of this old friend, it might not be so easy for them to find the R system. You have to know that in order to avoid being seen, especially to avoid their searches, Jalal deliberately found an isolated island overseas to build the R system. Then they tied up Hugh, Miliana, and Wally with ropes and brought them to the boat they came in. The group headed towards the island where the Tower of Heaven was located. Jalal, who had just received the half-piece of Phoenix Stone from Ian and was on his way back, suddenly sneezed a few times. He had no idea that his nest was about to be stolen. https://fictionzone.net/novel/I am in fairy tale Snatching Ultear at the start. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.